Hello and welcome to another episode of Rambling Weekly, episode 29th. Linguistic Turnabout is what we're going with on that one, and I've got a guest.
Wow.
But we'll cover that a little bit more after the break, so I'll see you on the other side. Hello, welcome back. That there is not a song that I'm quite familiar with. And it is from Darius Gaiden, and that is Visionnerz. That was performed by Zuntata. To me, I get desert vibes and imagery from that, but that might not be so much the case. But to really clarify that up, let my guest do the talking. I have with me Brian Clark, or as I affectionately always call him, Big Clark. How you doing?
It works. It's still my name.
Right.
I'm doing really good. It's been a good week. How about you?
It's going along. It hasn't been too bad. I just had my birthday yesterday.
I was gonna say you're still a birthday boy. How can you be doing bad?
It's not that bad. I've just been busy. What was it? Work hasn't been so bad. It's just busy on the other side of things.
I understand.
Right. So it's just like, okay, work's fine. And then, oh, shoot, I've got to do all my other stuff that I try to do because I don't want to be like I was in Japan where I was like, oh, I'm fine. And then I start like rocking the chair. I'm going, I need to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, you were you picked this song.
I did.
Give reasons why? Or
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, as you said, it's by Zuntata. For those who don't know, Zuntata was/is, they still exist, just in a little bit of a different form. The house band for Taito, who is a Japanese game development company now owned by Square Enix, but they're still kind of autonomous today. Very kind of similar idea to JDK, who I know you love playing here on the show, and who doesn't love listening to JDK. Taito, whereas JDK is maybe more of a rock orchestra, I would say, Zuntata is a little more avant-garde, with still kind of rock elements in it, as you can kind of hear from this specific arrangement of Visionnerz here. So. This is indeed from Darius Gaiden. The song, as it is in the game, sounds a bit different. It's a bit more low key. This was their live arrangement from, I believe, 1995 or 1996. And I love it, as I love most of their live arrangements, because I think it doesn't get any better than Zuntata live arrangements, to be honest. Like, this is like a rocked up version a little bit. Like, you've really got those guitars kind of leading things in there, whereas they normally don't. And I love it. I think it gives the song a song that already had a really amazing feel, like an even more amazing feel, just in kind of a different way.
Now, I don't know if you remember this or not. Didn't Johnny happy console gamer, Johnny Millennium. Didn't he
Yeah.
use the Zuntata?
He is also a Zuntata lover. I know that much. So I think he probably has used a lot of Zuntata songs as
Well,
background music over the
well, no, I was
years.
gonna say the movie. Didn't he use the
Oh,
at the beginning? Didn't he use the like their?
it's been such a long time since I've seen that movie. I can't remember like his specific musical choices, but it would not surprise me if he used something from Zuntata in there at all.
Yeah, yeah. It's been say if you haven't watched it a while, and you got the how long was that? An hour and 10 minutes or
Something
so?
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Hey, give it another. See, it still holds up pretty well.
Maybe I
Like,
will.
yeah, it's like good on him. But yeah, so yeah, the week has been going well. Anything out of the ordinary or interesting?
Thankfully, no. Nothing out
No,
of the ordinary or
no,
interesting, which is
no
how I
aliens.
often like it. No aliens.
No. Oh, yeah, I'm waiting for it. It's gonna be one of those
I
creepy
mean,
days.
who knows at this point?
Anything to make it, yeah, 2022, right? Oh boy, but yeah. So I would, if you could, give just a little brief bit about
Sure.
yourself.
Yeah. So I write and translate for my own site, which is 1millionpower.com. The stuff you can find there, if anyone listening would be so kind as to check it out, is mostly has to do with Japanese games, mostly retro, and Japanese rock music, which are two of my bigger interests. A lot of it is interview translations from things like Famitsu and things like that about, subject matter that I care about. Sometimes I do editorials, sometimes I do reviews. It kind of goes all over the place. Um, but yeah, it's just an excuse to translate and kind of write about the things that I'm interested in most.
Because especially when it comes to like the musical side,
Mm.
I'm not familiar with a lot of other people who. I mean, they're probably here and there, but
I would agree with you. Not trying to toot my own horn or whatever, but I think you're correct. There was a time when more people wrote and talked about Japanese music, but then K-pop came along, and now no one cares.
well, as I say, I seen the like I don't know. We might have. I might have mentioned this too before, or like there was a point about it was the last year or two. It wouldn't have been two because I was at Saitama at the time, but last back half of going to school at Bowling Green, that you could see the tides turning. Like when you
Sure, I
first
remember this time.
back in the darkened days,
Yeah.
when Hey 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 was really still like, oh, that's
Oh
a cool show.
boy. Oh boy, I miss that show.
Oh, I love that
Don't
show.
even get me
Please.
started on Hey Hey Hey. Oh,
And, they there was there was always that one or two people, or like there were always that one or two people that were like, Japanese isn't my thing, but Korean, that's the jam.
oh yeah.
And then there it started to hit that tipping point where people were like, Japanese, that's so blasé, pleh, meh.
Even in Japan, it started happening to a certain degree,
Right.
and still continues to happen to a certain degree. It's like Korean music has even supplanted a lot of their pop acts. I mean, I don't want to say Korea doesn't have any rock bands because that's obviously not true. But I feel unlike Japanese music, and someone can yell at me because this is just my perception. Korea's rock music does not really rise to the top. It's always the pop. It's it's buried in there somewhere, I'm sure, but there just does not seem to be a lot of it. So to me, I like pop music, don't get me wrong, but I'm a more rock centric person, and so I've not swayed, from Japanese rock for that reason, amongst other things. So I think they still have a lot to offer in rock, even if it may not be what it used to be. Maybe pop Korea does better now, and honestly, they probably do it better. So
Right, because they had that's I don't know if I want to say hiccup or like a peak,
mm,
but with like baby metal.
sure, which is kind of both, kind of rock
Right.
and pop at the same time.
It's what's that you if you kind of like what's the I can't think of the proper one for it, but it's like, oh, if you know you have one rabbit trying to chase, it's better to have one rabbit than trying to chase two, kind of
Ah,
thing.
sure, okay,
Is it's you got one foot in each lane, but you're really
yeah.
it's like pick a lane and then just be good at it. That's
Yeah, maybe that's why I've never been too much of a baby metal fan. I don't actively dislike them or anything. They're not really for me.
right. Yeah, same here. I always like the oh man, what is the band? I forget because I like him so much. Genki
Um,
Sudo, his band, the guy who's the MMA
oh,
fighter,
oh gosh. Yes.
like World, not World Revolution. What is that's like one of the songs.
Oh God, it's so right on the tip of my tongue.
I'm gonna look it up because it's gonna bother me.
Um, w World Order something.
World Order does sound right.
Yeah, I think it might just
It
be
is World
World
Order.
Order.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep. Good call. Like I like his a lot. It's poppy, and he's got the
Yeah,
dancing and stuff.
they have a cool thing going. I
Yeah,
agree.
and he left for a bit and then came back, and I think he's
Yeah,
left again to work on
I think so.
politics
Yeah,
of all
which
things.
why not, I
I
guess.
guess right. But yeah, I'm not a big pop guy. I
Sure.
I don't know. It's just I don't know. That's it. I don't
It's
know.
okay.
It's just not my thing. I mean, there's pop songs that I
For sure. Me
like some of
too.
the. This is going to be like really weird. I just liked the music; it just sounded really nice to me. But Card Captor Sakura,
Oh, sure.
the opening and ending themes for a lot of those in the show, really,
Yeah.
really, really popped. I used to
So
make like
you like Hirose Komi
yeah,
then because she
yeah.
composed I believe both of those and sung one of them.
The like a lot of the because I think they ended up with like 6 or 7 different songs throughout the whole series.
Yeah, I
But
only can remember the first opening and ending, which I know were hers, but she
right,
may not have done the
I don't
others.
think she did the ones after. But like, even still, they I used to do like what it was Stepmania charts for those
Oh,
songs.
sure. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was one of those weirdos.
One of those Step Mania guys.
Yeah, right. It was that and like S.S.H songs and
Sure.
a few other different things. But yeah, that was so. If anybody played Stepmania back in the day and you did a groovy step chart or you played that, that was me. I was the one doing the Card Captor Sakura songs. Thank you very much.
Shout outs to Step Mania.
Yeah. all all 3 people that I think it's still got a thing going on for it,
Probably.
but yeah, it was different times, different. So, B. Clark, question for you:
Sure.
what got you interested in Japanese?
I mean, my story is not particularly original. I was the guy who got into anime at 16 and was like, "Oh my God, this is cool." And then I found out that there was a whole bunch of it that, was not coming over, especially at the time. These are back in the days where you had to pay, $30 for VHS coast at your local Suncoast Motion Pictures at the mall. So it was tough pickings, but and so slowly I kind of started picking it up, and that interest shifted over time more toward games. I mean, I'd always liked games, but I kind of laser focused in more on Japanese games, and then music as well. So
Gotcha.
that's my origin story.
That's fair. Pause that for a moment. I'm getting a call from my boss. So,
Okay.
all right. Was there any in particular, like, what was the big one that really got you to be like, hey? this?
Anime wise, you mean?
Either or, like anime wise, game wise.
Um, Anime wise, it was just kind of everything. Like the first show I ever saw was Ranma One Half, which is not surprising given how old I am. Pretty common first show for people. It was like it was just everything. And games, I looked at a lot of again, given my age, like there were a lot of RPGs on, for example, the Super Famicom that were talked about in hushed tones about how amazing they were and how they were never going to get an English localization. And so something in the back of my mind was kind of like, I want to play those one day. I can do it. So that all that stuff was kind of a motivating factor, I think.
Okay. I'm going to be weird on this. That
Please.
stuff never resonated with me in that
Really?
same way. I was so dumb. I did not realize that they were from Japan, like games. I did not realize Mega Man was from Japan or anything. I just played it. It was Mega Man. Oh,
Well, I don't think anyone did at first. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that as soon as I was put down in front of an NES and shown Mega Man, I wasn't like, this is from Japan. Of course, I had no idea.
Right. No, I get
Like-
that. But like, even it wasn't until like even something like Mario didn't hit me that this is a game from Japan or anything.
Sure.
I was just like, Nintendo company, and this is.
Sure.
I was hitting double digit age by that point. 10, 11, 12.
I can't follow you.
Yeah. No, I was pretty old by the time it really kind of hit me that it's people from Japan that are making a lot of these games. And even then, I was playing something like Final Fantasy IX, and I
Sure.
was just kind of like it didn't really click with me in that way.
Okay.
Like, and I'm not a big anime guy.
Sure.
Like, I love me Cowboy Bebop. Picked up the
Sure.
Blu-ray stuff. Curious to see what's all on that.
A good set.
Is it?
Yeah.
As I would say, I literally just got it yesterday, so I'm like,
Oh,
I seen it. I seen it at the store. And it's like, oh yes, please. So, like, does it have the Mishmash Blues?
The Mishmash Blues.
Are you not aware of the Mishmash Blues?
I may not be.
It's the episode that appeared after it was first canceled, and it's a hosh posh of different stuff. Like, you are not aware of this.
No, it does not have it. I can tell you that much.
Gotcha. That's
and
sad.
also, this is my first time hearing of it.
Okay, I'll link you to a video of it. It's got it. It goes through a bunch of different lessons and concepts and philosophies of all of the characters and stuff, of like Jet's Faye, Spike, and
I'm a fake Cowboy Bebop fan.
Oh yes, totally. You're right. You are not a true Cowboy Bebop fan until you've seen the Mishmash Blues. Yeah, it's called like Session XX.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really cool, and the music in it, I can't remember. I wish I could remember, like Zombie Shaka. And them.
Oh,
yeah.
What, really?
Yeah.
Like it, but that's such a weird move, given that the rest of it was all like Yoko Kanno composed.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
it's weird, but it's some fantastic music. I'll link you. Make a note so I don't forget. It is just a fantastic look into what it is, and it just irritates me further of the Netflix.
Oh boy.
Nonsense. And not that cool on Mustafa for, like, yeah, he got Jet right. Jet is a pretty easy character to get right. Like, he's
agreed.
But he got him right.
Both.
Thumbs up.
No, I agree.
But like, they swung and missed on so much, and it's like, it's right there. It's all there.
I think we can all agree that show's biggest crime was vicious.
God. Oh, and who knows what they were going to do with Julia and all that sort of. Oh my.
I don't care.
Well, it doesn't matter. It does not matter.
And neither did any. And it really doesn't, because it got canceled.
Right.
So.
Sometimes there is a God on Earth. But yeah. Anywho, like so like Cowboy Bebop, DBZ, of course, was a big thing for me.
Of course,
but,
me too.
Like that, I remember when I was in middle school that some dude had a Sailor Moon shirt that he always wore on Thursdays.
Oh, specifically on Thursdays, because I
Either
also had a Sailor Moon shirt, but I certainly did not correlate it to any specific day of the week.
I could be wrong. It felt like he always wore it on the same. Oh my goodness! Ah! I'm going to have an aneurysm. All right, time out.
Okay.
Okay, you probably heard the phone calls. We've returned. But yeah, I was the big dum dum, and was, even when I was playing something like Final Fantasy IX and stuff, you'd see the names like Uematsu, or like Sakaguchi and that sort of thing, and I just thought, oh, those are cool names. I never really was like, oh,
Wow. Okay.
I was that sheltered, dumb, whatever. I don't know. I was just kind of like,
it may not even have been so much that to maybe give you the benefit of the doubt. Like, I've always been a person who is, in general, very interested in the people who make the things I like, which I know is not true of everyone. And if I remember correctly, it's maybe not as true with you, which is fine.
yeah, that's me.
That may also have had something to do with it. To be fair.
That could be, because even somebody like Brian Jakes, who wrote the Redwall series, I honestly didn't know anything about him really until a couple years ago, that he initially wrote the stories because he was a milkman delivering milk to a school of the blind, and he wanted to write stories for the kids.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, and like I didn't know that, and it wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago I was like, oh, that's really cool. Good on him.
Nice.
That sort of thing. I think it might have been actually a little bit more than that. It was when he had passed away. I seen that. It's like, oh,
okay.
Oh, that makes me really sad. Kind of thing. But it probably plays a really strong reason for me not really hitting my head. It's like it's a very strong. Oh, for better and worse, I've completely divorced the artist from the art. It's just kind of like, it's a video game. So, but it wasn't until I literally took Japanese on a whim. I was just like, I'll take Japanese, sure.
It really was just on a whim, then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I studied Spanish in high school for 4 years.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah. And, I looked some up because I liked Cowboy Bebop. Probably the most anime, like, tropey thing that I like, still to this day, is Full Metal Panic.
Oh, sure.
And that was really big. Like that first season.
It was real big.
Yeah, and then like Fufumafu really turned me off, because I was like, I've warmed up to it a lot, but when it first came out, I was like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, if I would have seen Second Raid, I'd have been like, yes, more of this, please. But no. And I actually eventually read the light novels and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Cool, neat story that they should have finished, but. I mean, the light novels didn't finish, I think, until like 2015, 16, 17, somewhere. Well, maybe not that late.
It was that late? Okay,
it wasn't that late. It was sometime in the teens.
Oh, okay.
I think it was like 13 or something. I think it was before I came back to the States. But
gotcha.
Yeah. But it was still a while before they had finished. I can't think of the author's name.
I can't either. I think I saw the first season of the show, and that's about as far as I got.
That was good enough for you?
Pretty much, yeah.
The Second Raid's pretty intense. If you're one, it's got one of my favorite scenes in an anime.
Oh, really?
It has to deal with a haircut.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds really goofy, but just the way that it's done is just really, and it could be because of all the years that had went by since I had like watched the first season, and to see this dynamic kind of shift for the for Sasuke and stuff, and
sure.
Or Sosuke. No, was it Sasuke? Sasuke Sagara.
I can't remember. Yeah, that's right. That sounds right.
But just to see just how he is in that moment, and Kanami and stuff, I was just like, this is a really like just fantastically done, because there's not a lot of dialogue going on, and there's a little bit of the fan service, but it's kind of through the eyes of Sagara, so I can at least tell myself this makes a bit of sense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I really liked it. But so you took Spanish. Was there any other languages or anything?
No, I guess I incredulously said you took Japanese on a whim, but I took Spanish on a whim, so
Okay.
I'm here. I reveal my hypocrisy. It's here for all. It's here for all to see. I think it was more like one of those things where like I can't remember if I was required to do it, but I was encouraged to do it. Let's put it that way. And so the school I went to only offered Spanish and French, and I honestly don't recall if there was something that appealed to me more about Spanish at the time, or if I literally just threw a dart at a dartboard and it landed on Spanish. But yeah, I took actually I don't know if I took 3 or 4 years of it. It was at least 3. I did fine. My heart was never really in it.
Oh, yeah.
I was more just kind of doing it because it was a class to take and a thing to do. And humorously enough, while I was taking Spanish, I kind of found Japanese, and I think there were even times I was reading a Japanese book in Spanish class. So, yeah.
Oof. The yeah, to add to that, like on a whim thing, it was because they had a thing for incoming freshmen to stay the weekend with a parent.
I see.
And then for some reason, or it was just the night. I think it might have been the night. So my dad and I did, but you stayed in like different things. So my dad, he went out drinking with the other parents, and I stayed up all night with some random people, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze, shooting pool, going for a walk and stuff. And so up all night, just kind of like whatever. And there, you get bombarded. Oh, what classes do you want to take and stuff?
Sure.
And it's like, sorry?
Now, bombarded by staff or teachers?
Okay.
Well,
like
so it was like a recruitment almost. Not really a recruitment is the wrong word, but like almost like testing the waters with you to be like, look at all these things you could be interested in.
Well, I could be wrong, and I probably am wrong in not remembering this, but I don't really... I think they might have said, hey, make sure you have an idea of what you're going for. And I didn't want to go to Bowling Green, not because the university itself. I just didn't want to go to school. Like I was one of those. But my parents were like, "You're going.
You got to do it.
You're going." I'm like, but I don't. And they eventually like picked up the first year for me, and then I had to pay the rest. But I got them all paid off. So hey, right, small victories. But they and I could have been because I stayed up and I just wasn't interested in whatever. I got in there and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I actually initially went in for chemistry.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
Do I look there?
No.
Yeah, I wanted to be a chemistry teacher at first, and
not even like a chemist, but a chemistry teacher.
Yeah. And I absolutely despise that program because while I understand that there are hundreds of kids taking remedial, like beginner chemistry and all this sort of stuff, the teachers would just kind of push everything to their assistants and everything. And it's like, we're paying tens of thousands of dollars and you
give me the assistant. And
nothing against the assistant.
No, absolutely not.
Like I do not appreciate this where they just kind of I would get the right answers for stuff, but I wouldn't write down my work.
Boy, I don't miss school.
Well, and then they'd be like, "This is you got to show your work." And I'm like, "I don't want to show my work. I already know how to. This is stupid. This is simple. Like I'm good." And they're just like, and I'm like, "Okay, fine." And then I thought about doing like creative writing, and that was a different sort of stupid because I took a creative writing workshop and the teacher had just graduated, so she wanted to be buddies with everybody, and I'm like, no, you are the teacher, be the teacher.
Yeah, that's basically just as bad, but in a different way.
right. So it's like oscillating from one bad to the complete entirely opposite same bad, and then eventually I just landed. I was like, fine. I switched my major my third year to Asian studies,
Okay.
So like I did a whole major for it, like all the major stuff in like 2 years, because I went to school for 5, and one of those was studying abroad. So I was a busy boy the back half.
Wow, that's quite a journey from chemistry teacher to writer to Asian studies
Which is
professional.
right. Which, I mean, I got something out of it, but
Sure.
it's not something you would normally be like, oh yeah, what do you do with this?
Hey, I mean, it may not be Asian history specifically, but I'm fairly certain I know somebody else who at least had a partial major in Asian studies and ended up turning out to be, working in the IT industry.
Okay.
So I feel like Asian studies is just your gateway to things that aren't at all related to Asian studies,
Right, right.
whatever that means.
It's sort of something in your pocket that you can
Yeah.
kind of card you can play at certain. It's a wild card every so often. um, yeah, it's just kind of. But like, so you said with Spanish you were just like with Japanese. I'm assuming you were a lot more assiduous, a lot more thorough with your study on there.
Well,
Yeah? No.
yes and no.
Uh-oh.
I had more motivation because Spanish, like, I nothing against Spanish or, any Spanish speaking cultures at all, but there wasn't really anything about it that interested me at the time. So I was just kind of doing it to do it. Again, it was kind of just a class, but since I'd found anime and since I liked games and things like that, is maybe childish as it may sound to some people, that's kind of what kept me in it and kept me interested. And maybe we'll get into this later, but I'm a pretty firm believer to the extent that it makes sense, like, use the things that you love and are interested in as study material. Like, I really do think that works. And so it's a little hard at the beginning, obviously, when you don't know anything. You really do have to kind of learn the basics before you can kind of put that spin on things. But my route was self-study. I think I maybe took one Japanese class in a summer community college thing ever, and that was the only quote-unquote formal class I ever had. As a result, I was left up to only my own diligence to progress, which failed me many times. And so I took a lot longer to get to even where I am now than you might imagine, because I would kind of go in fits and starts.
Right.
Because I had only myself to motivate me. And these days I'm a pretty good self-motivator, but back in my teens and early 20s, that maybe was not as true. So I couldn't always keep myself on task. And back then I don't think I really saw how to quote unquote progress, through self-study either. So I did get diligent, but I certainly was not always.
So it's not about getting good; it's about getting diligent.
That's my story anyway. Man, so I should title my autobiography. Boy, it's a good idea.
I'd say, I honestly did not realize that for yourself. Yeah, all of mine. I self-studied, but
Everybody does to a certain degree at a certain point,
like, and maybe you probably saw this at light speed. I don't know if you had others who kind of would do the same thing of self-study, but in classes, it was that slow drag. You had the first year where there's like everybody's gung-ho about it. Second year, the first half is like, okay, I'm out. This is way too much. And then the third year, it's like, oh, you people are actually serious about this. Okay,
yeah,
well,
pretty much.
You're in for a penny, in for a pound.
The arc of a language class program. Yes.
Right. And there was the and my professor, Akiko Sensei, she and she still teaches there. Lady's like in her mid-80s.
Wow.
God bless her. But she was really adamant that you study at least an hour a day.
Good advice.
And for me, that's really good advice. A lot of other people were not too keen on said advice because, we're 18, 19, 20,
Oh yeah.
20-year-olds for the most part. And
That's a rough putt for a 20-year-old or under.
right. It's like, what? No. And like the circle that I developed when I was going there and everything, we were, we were into DDR a bit.
Sure.
And playing that, like Arbol was a part of that. Because we love DBZ, we grew up with it. Everybody was a DBZ character kind of thing. So Arbol was Goku because he's just stupid good at it, and he would just he got all the hacks and all the cheats and all the
and
power.
he streams it now. Well, maybe not DDR, but he at least I know streams Poppin'.
He does DDR every now and again. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Poppin' at one point, I think he was like top 10 in the States.
Yeah, I feel like he might be the best. And I know a couple of really good Poppin' players, but I think he is like the best Poppin' player I've probably ever seen.
He is, and it's because, he's our age kind of thing. He's the vet. He's the wily vet. He knows what he's doing. but yeah, he's just got that stupid Goku ability with
Makes
that.
sense.
But I was Piccolo.
I like it. Piccolo's my favorite.
I was
no wonder we're friends.
Right. I was always the one who I would just kind of fuck off and be wherever, and then all of a sudden I would you need me? I'm there, kind of thing.
Here I am. Yeah.
right.
I might not be able to beat the big bad, but I can sure take out his lackeys.
Right. But like that, but I have this weird, uncanny ability to not really regress. Maybe
I envy that. That's fantastic.
Like my brother, he doesn't have it either, and he's like, "How do you do this?" Because we'll play Smash, like. And then I won't play it for 8 months. And then he won't, like, sit there training play it or anything. But he'll play for a while and everything, and just here and there. And then we'll play again, and I'll just, like, stomp him. And he's like, how do you do this? How? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just... and I was over at Arbel's place a few years back. And he's got the poppin' machine and stuff. And I was showing my brother, because he came up as well. Because it was kind of like... It was my way of trying to... like be the older brother to be like guidance thing. I don't know what I was thinking. That was just kind of something to get him out of the house, to get out of his own head, sort of thing. And I played Poppin', and I could still pass like 31s and 32s, and I hadn't played it in 10 years.
You need to bottle that and sell it, because you'll make yourself rich.
So something I don't know. Like Matt's like, I told him that, and he's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What?" And my brother's like, "This is dumb. You're dumb. This
it is
like
dumb.
Ridiculous.
You are dumb."
It's just the only thing I can think of is that's how my brain compartmentalizes things, and then it's a trigger, and it'll just be like, "Okay, I'm ready to go." Like
It's amazing.
It's yeah, I don't really know how that, like with Mega Man, it's the same sort of thing. Like I'll not pick it up for a while and then all of a sudden play it and just be like, okay.
It's weird. A game certain types of games, I guess I can almost kind of understand it working a little bit better. Like I don't know how to explain this, but like, not that I'm saying playing Mega Man is easy, but a Mega Man, like there's only so much you have to commit to muscle memory.
Okay, yeah,
and
fair.
so I can kind of understand where you would be able to do that with Mega Man, but like to do that well on Poppin' or DDR or something without having played it in years is a little more mind-blowing to me.
The Poppin' one, probably, because I love the Nekomata Master songs.
Okay,
so,
yeah,
like a lot of those are in the 30s. There's, I can't remember. There's like, I can't remember the song. There's one song in there, but it's another one that's like a 33 that I really like. It's Namida Monogatari or something like that. I don't know, but it's like a cool little rock ballad sort of thing, and it's just like and it's just like some of those songs are just for whatever reason, I'm able to just be like, I'm good, I'm golden, I
Wow.
got this, and it's just yeah. It's I don't know, I really don't.
That's a great ability to have for languages, though, to be honest. I mean, if it extends to languages, which I
Oh,
assume it does.
yeah, like I've gotten rusty over a bit because I've been playing through Hajimari no Kiseki,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I really stepped back from anything Japanese for about 3 years, 2 to 3
Sure.
years. Not anything against it. I was just busy doing other things,
Yeah.
and then I came back to it, and I was like, okay, timeout. Okay, I'm good. Like, I just needed a moment to be like, okay, there's a lot of kanji here that
Yeah,
is
it
slapping in my
is
face.
it is work. Like, I mean, it becomes less work as you know, hone yourself a little bit more, but it always is work,
Right.
is the thing. And sometimes, like, you know, depending on what your mood level or, you know, what you have an appetite for, like, you just can't, you know. So I completely understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what what like I put this question to you, and I'll answer it first for myself. Like when studying the language really start to click for you,
Mm.
the big thing for me was the third year. I had been there for I went to Japan for 2 months. One was a month with the students, and then I stayed a month extra
Hmm.
with a girl I was dating at the time, and went to try to climb Mount Fuji. That didn't work because it was raining, and somebody like died the day before, and I was super sad, and just stayed around around the
Oh,
base of Mount Fuji
wow.
and stuff. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was unfortunate. Rest their soul. But the so I had that under my belt. I had studied for 2 years, and it was like a bit of a day and night sort of thing. I completely goofed on the first semester and then dunked it on the second semester because I didn't want to be in school. So I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to just goof off this first year, and then I'll
Yeah.
come back, I'll skate by, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm really made of, kind of thing. And the third year, um, I was taking a bunch of different classes. Like one was like a Japanese literature class, one was Japanese film class.
Okay.
And I think it had to do with the film class, and we were watching Kurosawa's Stray Dog,
Sure.
and I think it was that one or something. But the teacher stopped it, and he eventually went to Penn State or something like that. He was kind of weird, but he a different teacher than Akiko Sensei. This guy, he was just kind of goofy with what he wanted to teach when it came to Japanese and
Okay.
stuff. But he stopped it, and he wanted to talk about moshi moshi. And it's like, what is
Okay.
that? Like, where does that even come from as a thing for answering the phone? And for whatever reason, my brain just kind of put them together and was like, oh, it's something to do with like Tomosu, like,
Ah, sure.
right? And that's
Yeah.
like because I like etymological kind of language stuff. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's very a linguistics heavy topic more than like what might come up in a regular like I'm here to teach you Japanese
right.
kind of course.
Yeah, and so like, and it just so naturally just kind of dawned on me, and yeah, and it was just kind of like a, oh, I actually know things. I
It's
can
stuck.
infer. I can do the
Yeah.
thing, kind of. So that was like the I guess spark point. Like I had no, not really, a minor little bit. Like I honestly didn't really dive too much into, oh, let me play games in Japanese or anything like
Sure.
that. But it wasn't like after that kind of flashpoint, that's when I started to get into it a bit more and everything. And
Gotcha.
I would event like the next year. That's when I would study over at Saitama
Okay.
Dasai for
Das Saitama.
for a year study and play things like Ys in Japanese and
Sure.
Fire Emblem, which kicked me in the teeth. But
You were a big back in the day, you were like one of YouTube's big purveyors of the Japanese only Fire Emblem games, at least to my mind.
yeah, like uh, Thrakia is still never talked about.
It's true.
And
Yeah,
Seisen.
even in the middle of Fire Emblem mania as we
Mm-hmm.
are, it's true. It still never really comes up.
Yeah, it's sad because Thrakia's a kick in the teeth, but I love it. And Seisen Okefu is my favorite of the bunch. And there's a lot more talk about that one because
Oh yeah,
that one does have that translation. It isn't hard. It's
yeah.
weird for a Fire Emblem game. It's just a weird presentation. It's only 12 chapters, but you're taking multiple castles per chapter, and it's more of an actual war. But yeah, I'm probably one of the first goofballs on that.
I think so.
Maybe. Those were the days. But how about yourself? What was the flashpoint for you?
For me, I kind of got a little bit, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but it was realizing that, of course, once I was kind of past the basics, that I should really use the things that I was interested in otherwise as sort of like study fodder. But even almost more than that, like you could interpret that as just being like, okay, I'm going to learn manga or whatever and learn things from that, which I did. But what really clicked for me was when I actually started translating things, like for more than just myself. So back in probably like 2002, 2003, I did more or less all the translations for Mognet.net,
Oh wow.
which was a site that my partner at the time and I ran. Um, and it started as just we had been and were getting more and more into Japanese music, and we kind of wanted an outlet for it. And so I was at that time, of course, my skills were still relatively rudimentary, but I had enough confidence to kind of say, let me, choosing my songs wisely, obviously, like I knew when I was in over my head. Let me try this. Like let me try translating some of these songs so that like we can kind of get these out to people who are interested, because at the time translations of that stuff was very few and far between, at least of any kind of quality. And you didn't really have machine translation back then either, so you couldn't really go that route. So we put together a website and I tried it, and it was slow going at first, and God knows some of my early translations were probably not the best things in the world. But I kind of learned a lot through doing that. I would spend like inordinate amount of times like looking up and researching things that I didn't fully understand. Of course, these are song lyrics, so they can get a bit slangy sometimes. And at the time, I didn't have a great way of looking some of that stuff up, so I kind of had to take some leaps of faith on some things. But I would never put anything out without feeling like I had the idea of it. And I would go on forums and things like that and ask for the help of more experienced people, and hit up a Japanese friend who might be willing to help me or whatever. But that like actually producing output, and you could argue it was still just for me, right? Even like we had visitors, I know other people read it, but even just the perception, whether or not it's actually true, of putting out content for someone other than me, I think was my flashpoint. And it was about something that I liked and something that I felt knowledgeable about and grew more knowledgeable about as a result.
See, you can go the route of something that you like being that, or you'd be like me. I'm not a big movie guy, and something from a movie that spawned a discussion.
Hey,
like inspiration can come from anywhere.
it triggered the right part of your brain,
Exactly.
which is ultimately what matters.
Yeah, oh, and I think unfortunately, at least from what I've experienced, what I've seen, to me, even for myself to a certain degree, there is this bad habit of just not being okay with failure or getting something wrong. And it's like that's not the end of the world. Like, for example, it will, unless I get knocked in the noggin by a brick or something, I will never in a bajillion years ever conflate hantai and hentai. Those two words will, because there was somebody that we knew who got a little sauced when I was studying over in Saitama and was going, Oriwa hentai desu, Oriwa hentai desu. And it's like, dude,
what are you doing?
Why are you doing
You're not
this?
going to live this down.
Because he wanted to disagree with something.
Yes.
For those who don't know Japanese, hantai means I'm in disagreement. I oppose this. Hentai means you're a pervert. The hentai one, probably most people know.
Yes, hentai. If you've watched any amount of anime or read any manga, like you've probably heard it or seen it.
Right? And it's just like,
what
are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, like, oh, so embarrassing. But you wouldn't. You won't
it's like
forget.
trying to signal to someone that they have something in their teeth, but they're just not getting it.
Right? It's just like, oh no, what have you doomed us to? Like, these people here, the waitresses are looking at us like we're a bunch of weirdos.
Oh, so it was in front of like...
It was at a restaurant.
Oh, it was... Oh, boy.
Because he's drunk out of his mind.
Okay. I thought maybe it was just like everybody hanging out in a room and
if only.
or whatever. So it was like just among, not necessarily like close friends, but like friends and like people who
These
were
walls
just
are
there
sacred.
to visit,
We will protect you. No, this was out in public. Yeah.
Oh boy, that's rough.
Yeah, that's really rough. Yeah, that's really embarrassing. Thanks.
Boy.
Oh, but yeah, like it's just it's but like making those goofs, as embarrassing as they may be.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just it's something you can laugh about. It's the benefit of aging, I guess, is that you just get to laugh at the goofy things. But like, that's why I'm laughing all the time, because I can see all the goofy, stupid things that I've done.
My only story that I can think of that's similar to that, it's not on the same level at all. But when I first started reading the manga JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, JoJo no Kimio no Boken, I went to the Japanese bookstore that was local to me and asked for JoJo no Bimyo na Boken, JoJo's Delicate Adventure. And hardly, again, on the same scale, but it was embarrassing to me at the time. And it's my funny little story to tell about that.
I could see it actually being like a story arc with that.
Right.
Like, it could work. Oh, that's good. Oh, goodness. Is there any other kind of things you want to cover in this segment before we pop on over to the...
Let's hop on.
Okay, all right. We'll stop it here, have the song, and then talk about it after, because I have... Okay. I don't know which one I'm gonna... Okay. So we'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye. Yeah. welcome back. That beautiful tune is Genshi no Yoru, or depending on how you want to look at it, and we'll get into that about it, is that you can call it Illusionary Nights, maybe Nights of, or Nights of Illusion, Night of Illusion. Oh, translations. How do you make this stuff go?
How do you even figure it out?
But so this comes from an album that is how to put it? It's done by two people. Edu is one of the doujinshi, and the other is man after my own heart, S.S.H, or as he likes to call himself, Saitama Saishuheiki.
Oh. Maybe you drank with him.
If only. I don't think I did. It would have been really cool, but yeah, just to call yourself like Saitama's ultimate weapon.
That's a whole vibe. I like it.
Right, and it works with his music. I mean, this one is a much more mellow, but like Arbel can attest to this. I loved playing his stuff all the time, and he has like a synth guitar sound. Arbel absolutely hates.
Oh no!
It's a little tinny, but I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, but the guitar here was a very real guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a really good song. It comes from the 8th Toho game, which is like a Yasho, like Imperishable Night. So it's like Eternal Night Vignette, Imperishable Night. Have to have all those wonderful Toho odd titles, like just overly.
They sure are, and there are so many Toho games. And for being a person who is as into shooters, shmups, STGs, whatever the heck you want to call them, as I am, I have shockingly little experience with Toho, at least so far. But I've heard a lot of the music.
That's it. That's all I'm really familiar with. Because you know me, it's Varth. There's only Varth in my heart.
Yes, there is only Varth.
It's nothing against them. It's just never really. Yeah, it's just never something I've been like. Yes, I want to play these. I'm just like, I just dig the music. Heck yeah.
In this one it's what I really love about it is that the guitar line in there, the lead part, is very kind of like a classical rock sort of guitar line. Yeah. Like it's really cool sounding, but it's not trying to do anything like that you've never heard before. And then it kind of trades off and goes back and forth with the synthesizer, which is much more, like you said, kind of a little bit mellower until it gets to, I guess, what you would consider the chorus, where the synthesizer just gets crunchy. Yeah. Like, it's amazing.
Oh, that's a fantastic song. Like, the whole album, Eternal Eclipse, is just... I like... There's a few doujinshi that, like, Phoenix Project, I've met before. Really cool dude. Nice. A lot of his music. That's where I got a lot of the doujinshi CDs that I have. Was from him, from ordering them online and stuff. I met him. I hooked him up with Arbel when Arbel made his rhythm game.
Oh, nice.
And stuff, and so that's how they got to...
Did he do music?
He did. I think he did a couple songs. I could have sworn he did a couple songs. There was a couple other doujinshi that I had him contact, but they were adamant that if they did make music, they didn't want it to be sold, like priced.
Yeah, got
kind
it.
of thing. And that's a really cool... Like a bummer that they can't.
Those are some morals.
Yeah, right.
They got their convictions. Good on them.
Yeah, and so, but like S.S.H will always be near dear to my heart. I love a lot of Edu stuff. It's just and there'll be a song by Edu that I'll pick for a different bump. But yeah, like S.S.H is the one that started it all from hearing Zeromiss's remix that he did.
Okay, I have to look that up.
Yeah, like
I love a Zeromus theme. Like I absolutely do.
Castlevania did a cool Castlevania medley.
Okay,
and
this is
stuff.
sounding more and more up my alley. I've clearly been missing out on
I
some
will I
things
will
here.
open you to a whole new world on doujinshi stuff there. SSH is, I think his site's back up, and this is some of the unfortunate things with a lot of this doujinshi stuff is
Yeah.
that part of it I've lost through my own computers fritzing out and everything, but there's just a lot of music that's gone.
Yeah, the problem when you aren't focused on keeping it distributed in some kind of sustainable mean is it's not really preserved. Like it's left up to the people of the internet to preserve, which sometimes works out and sometimes doesn't. So
And to be fair, a lot of Japanese were really good about that and things
they
like in
are.
with like what was the satellite what was the
The
thing?
Satellaview.
Yeah, Satellaview and stuff.
Yeah.
And just some things like that. They were definitely really good with it. Dojinshi stuff, maybe to some degree, but
And there's so much of it is
yeah.
the thing. So I think that makes it so much harder to preserve than a lot of commercial stuff. And that said, there may be some crazy archive out there that I'm just not aware of, and I'm,
For sure.
talking trash here.
Well, no,
But
there's certainly a possibility, and it's just one that I haven't. Like, I've really
yeah,
fallen out of being the weirdo gaijin that like looks into it and
it's a
stuff.
little harder to from a distance, I think, for the doujinshi stuff. Like I feel like there's real value in like being there for things like that because so much of those events are still just like local events. Like that if you don't go to them, you don't get anything out of it, you
Yeah,
know.
I got that personally from Mr. Phoenix Project when I asked him because I have Knights of Round, which is there's a song that's going to be on. So yeah, there's a song from on there that's going to be on one of these bumpers. Knights of Round 1, Knights of Round 2, and Knights of Round 4. And when I asked him about Knights of Round 3, he just laughed at me. And he'll be
Oh,
like, good luck trying to get that one. I'm like,
oh
no!
no.
Why would you do this to me? Why? But I mean, this it's just one of those things that, it's like,
Yeah, that's when you're dojin, that's how it goes.
and that's fine. Like, I like
Yeah.
that kind of artistic spirit of it. Where
Yeah.
it's just like, we're just doing it for the artwork or, the
Yeah.
artistry of it. And yeah, we might make a couple bucks here and there, and some people really dig the stuff. But really, it's a good thing just to get us all together and hang out and collab and stuff.
I can respect it.
So, but yeah, that tune, glorious tune, such a good, wholesome tune. There's a, what is his name? It's like McNuckle, Stone McNuckle.
Yes.
Yeah, he's very similar, and he's been told this before because I think he's Swedish, but his style is very similar to SSH's. So
I think I've heard more Stone McNuckle stuff than I have SSH, but
okay,
I'll have to rectify that.
right. But if you like his stuff, you'll probably like SSH's.
Cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the topic for today is, linguistic turnabout is my cheeky way of phrasing it, but it's really kind of translation in general, and the fun, infuriating, dastardly, despicable aspect of doing translation.
I feel like you really have a story to tell here.
Well, yes and no. Like, so in the notes that I sent to you on it, I was like, how did I phrase it? I phrased
I can
it.
read it to you if you like.
Please read it to me.
Where I saw the wreckage of translation work as an ungrateful hellscape, it made me recoil from even bothering beyond my personal limit.
Yeah. So I know somebody who did translation work for like Konami
Okay.
and a few other people who did translation work on some side stuff. That and also seeing what was going on with the translation work done by those few who decided to pick it upon themselves to do Trails in the Sky, FC,
Ah, yes.
and I was like, no, Absolutely not. And I like people always ask me like, why didn't you ever do translation work? And it's like I know too many people who do translation work, and they're all depressed people. Like they were just miserable. Like and was like, did you see any of that, or was I just the unlucky one who was like,
I mean, I've seen it around me, to be sure, but I think really those feelings are fairly directly correlated to what type of translations people are doing for what type of projects. Like game localization is fraught with stories of miserable people, and that's less because of the work as it is than it is the culture within the games industry, particularly in Japan. It's just full of overwork and horrible deadlines, and I think that extends to some other types of translation too. But maybe anime, for example, it wouldn't surprise me if it also extended to that. But games, I think, is the classic example of like them not necessarily being miserable because they're translating, but because they're maybe mistreated.
well, who was the one like superhero who did FF6 and what was it? What is his name? The guy he had like Chrono Trigger and stuff. I think he had to translate.
Ted Woolsey.
He had to translate it in a month or something like that.
I won't say I remember it was exactly a month, but it was something absurdly, an absurdly short amount of time like that. Yes,
Right.
People have their differing opinions on Woolsey, but I'm extremely pro Woolsey. Like he did make some weird decisions, but don't we all? Is especially given the time that was, because that was before localization was called localization. You know what I mean? Like that was before the concept of it was really in people's minds. But he was doing it. Yeah, I think he's a great example of someone who like probably rose up in the face of that kind of mistreatment and just did like an awesome job.
And his mistreatment was on one side, but as time has gone on, there's a lot of people who now look at it and try to nitpick at a lot of it. And I think
Absolutely.
they don't take into consideration that there were character limits. So
They mostly don't.
right.
Yes,
So
it's
nowadays
true.
you can just translate stuff and be like, oh, okay, it just needs to, you need to put
Yep.
this much into it. And you can get away with a lot more on that.
Yeah.
And when it's like, oh, you have 13 spaces to.
Yeah. You gotta put something in there and make it work, even if
Right.
it can't really fully express the idea that you're trying to get across. Like that is a challenge that like I'll spoil something. I've never done game localization before. That is a challenge I've never had to face. Like I can't even imagine how I would handle it, to be honest, without feeling like I was making compromises. Like I have nothing but respect for doing that kind of a job under those kinds of limitations.
Well, and this is where this is a bit of artistry in the work, right?
Yes.
And this is where certain artistry, like certain artists, rub certain people like myself the wrong way. Cough, cough. Working designs.
Sure.
I
Well,
like.
working designs is a different topic.
Well, but their translation work of their,
Yes.
like all that stuff just grinds my gears in all the wrong
I
ways.
am with you on working designs.
But I mean, it is just a way of translating stuff,
It is.
and
It is. It's a
a
way
lot
of
of people
doing it.
like it, and they are all
Yeah?
wrong.
It's okay to be wrong. It's fine.
It's okay.
You're
Okay,
allowed.
you will be forgiven for now. But but for some people, that's I mean, look how some people like I know him as Ed. What is his name? What was his handle? Ed, what's your handle? I don't remember, buddy. You know who I'm talking about?
Is it someone who
Oh,
translates?
No, think of the old YouTube crew. Yeah, like
Splatter Trigger?
Splatter Trigger. Thank you. like that working design was near to his heart. Johnny Millennium near to his heart.
Sure, yeah.
It's like there's like that age, range where it's just like, yeah, yes, this is
Well,
an appropriate.
I should have been in the pocket for that too, because I'm pretty similarly aged to the two people you mentioned, but it bounced off of me. Even at the time, I was like, "What is this? What am I reading?" Bill Clinton,
Right. God, it's so bad. Why? What? Oh,
this
goodness.
is a fantasy game. Why are we talking about Bill Clinton?
Right? It's talking about mixing your peas with your mashed potatoes.
Oh God.
Like, it's just, yeah. But so you didn't really have the, I guess because some of these people were fairly close to me to some degree, that because the one who worked for Konami, he was a year or two ahead of me at Bowling Green. And yeah, it's like seeing how that was hitting him, or seeing how some of the issues that Arbol went through on his own. I won't really air them. It's not like they're personal because they've happened to him personally, but just some of the hiccups and stuff that he was going through with like studying and dealing with that sort of thing. I'm just like, no, I am no, like I'm not even going. Like I remember RPG Swagman, good old Greg buddy.
Sure,
like he was always like, yeah, you should translate Trails in the Sky. And I'm like, I like being
as though it was the easiest thing.
Well, no, it was more of, hey, you love this thing.
Yeah,
help
you
gift
do
this
it
to everybody else, kind of thing. And it's like, no,
that's
right?
So much work,
right?
Oh my goodness.
And seeing how they, to tinge things a little darker, is that was it an attempt, I think, or at least a thought of doing it, like committing suicide during this translation of Trails SC.
I don't think I'd heard that, but
really, yeah, there was like something that had stopped the translation. I want to say it was SC, the fan translation or something hiccup, and it was so overbearing that they were like, I'm thinking of ending it myself. And
wow,
like, oof. Heavy topic. Heavy.
And for a fan translation of all things.
Well, and I'm wondering if I'm just conflating it, if it was at this point it had started, like the PSP release had came out.
Right.
Because I remember Arbol like FC ends on a cliffhanger, right? And it's like a gut punch cliffhanger, and you're like, oh my god, when's the next game coming out? And it doesn't come out for 5 years. Like, oh Lord. Like, I, being the jerk that I was like, oh, I'll just pop in the second disc because I bought the trilogy on the PSP collection. Thanks, guys. Like, I am not waiting. So, yeah. It was sometime around then. Like, I want to say in 2012 or so, where that news came out about it, and there was this like pump the brakes. And people, I think most people were very understanding of that. They're like, yeah, take your break, like, focus on that, don't
absolutely.
So, but yeah, that's oof like, so you mentioned good old Ted.
Yes.
Is there anybody else you look up to when it comes to translation work that you're like, yes, this person super duper?
Ted Woolsey kind of came in there as not, intended for that, but I suppose now that I think about it, he is kind of on there. Another person I'll mention, who isn't, as far as I'm aware anyway, he hasn't particularly like translated a game for a company. Like, you cannot buy a product with his translation on it. But Clyde Mandolin, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He is probably best known for doing a fan translation of Mother 3.
Oh, okay.
An extremely good, like high quality fan translation of Mother 3. But what brought me to him is several years ago he did a series. He has a site and books under the name Legends of Localization.
Okay.
And so he did some streams on Twitch several years ago, going through. He did this for a few games, but Final Fantasy VI were the ones that were particularly interesting to me. He's also a programmer, so he was able to kind of rig this up. But he played through the game side by side with the original Japanese text, both versions of the Final Fantasy 3/6 localization for the West, so like the original Woolsey Super Nintendo one, and then the one that got relocalized on the Game Boy Advance, an early fan translation, and also Google Translate, which was more a source of comedy than anything. But in like the level of detail he went into, just kind of analyzing, as a person who didn't do any of those translations, right? He was not a part of any of them. But he was kind of looking at them and looking at the original Japanese and just kind of analyzing and saying, this may have been how they came to this, or, they completely got this wrong. Not in a malicious way, of course, just in a very analytical way. And
critiquing.
I was really amazed by it, to be honest. Like, that level of analysis, like, going, from somebody who of course, could translate from the original language themselves. And, he went into details on the original Japanese dialogue when it made sense. But he was not, translating every single line of dialogue for himself on the fly. It was more, kind of an analysis. And his books are structured similarly. And he has articles about Castlevania 2, everybody's favorite translation.
It's the best game ever. Go away.
And I'm not even talking about the game. I'm just talking about the translation. We're gonna have a whole nother podcast if we gotta sit here and talk about Castlevania 2. But that, and he has a Mother book. He has a Zelda book. He's just great at what he does there. So I admire his work quite a bit as well as a translator.
Yeah, you'll have to give me a proper link for him.
Absolutely.
There. Yeah, because that sounds like that'd be a really interesting thing to.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy the stuff that he does as well.
Because that's even though it's a very analytical thing, that's still in that artistry sort of nuance vibe, especially when you get into like how do you translate, because for like you had brought up before with like the slang in a musical sense, that's a hard bit of room to wiggle in.
It's very hard.
Right?
Sometimes I'm glad that I mostly do interviews these days, to be honest, when I go back and look at some of those lyrics and what a hard time I had trying to figure out what to do with some of them.
Well, it's like when it comes to that, like, what are you okay with losing in translation? Because you're going to lose things. Like that's
for sure.
That's just the nature of language. Like that's what always. Not trying to be mean, but my mother, love her to death. She is one of those weird moms that like will take interest in what her kids like, and then dials it to 11 sometimes.
Oh boy. Okay. I have not had a parent like that, so I don't know what that feels like at all.
So yeah, she was the one that got me to watch the second raid because she had watched it and she was like, yeah, it's really good. You should watch it. I'm like, oh, okay. Like she's into like Chinese dramas now and K-drama stuff.
Wow.
She's all for it. Like, she but initially she would always ask me, hey, how does this translate? Hey, how does this? And I'm like, and sometimes it'd be a song. So Orange Range is playing and she wants me to like translate what the lyrics for this line means. And I'm like, I can't do that. Partially because I can't hear it. Like, This is
Right.
why just because of my hearing, like
Right.
it's hard for me to hear music, so I need to be able to read it. And at that time, good luck trying to find Orange Range lyrics. I,
Yeah.
it's like, but
There was a site called Mognet.net that you could have gone
Well,
to. It probably had that Orange
Probably
Range
did.
song translated for you already.
but this would be in the car, and this
Oh,
was
sure. Okay.
mid 2000s little.
I'll give you a pass then.
For now, please forgive me. But yeah, she would do that, and it would infuriate me. Partially because it would make me feel inadequate because I couldn't just be like, "Oh yeah, this is what it is."
Absolutely. Like, get in your own head, like, why can't I do this?
Right. And then the other hand, I'm like, wait, no, time out. I can't even hear lyrics in English. So, like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like, no.
Literally, you pumped the brakes in the car and you
Right.
said, now hold on.
Right. So, like, it's like, you know, if I could take a look at the lyrics, I can give you a better idea. But until I can see them,
Even then, with songs, it's so hard. 'Cause
Right.
think about lyrics. Lines depend on each other.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say this. I mean, you can say this line literally means this, but you're not necessarily capturing the full context of what it really means, like
Right.
for the song.
yeah. So, yeah. So it's just kind of boiled down to that, and maybe I got lucky in how I learned and how it retains to me. But I'll admit I have a hard time translating between the two languages.
Okay,
But I understand each one.
sure.
And I think part of it's because I want to figure out the exact word I want to use in English and stuff. I have a hard time speaking English half the time, anyways. It's like, what word do I want to use in English? I have no idea. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well. But like, I understand it in Japanese, but to put it into English,
Yeah.
it takes me a moment. I understand things in
I
English.
understand.
But I'm able to like bifurcate that and be like,
Right.
if it's in Japanese and it's all in Japanese, cool, let's go, let's roll. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
It might take me a little bit of a moment now on certain things, but yeah, like, oh no, I get you. And then English, yeah, sure, but so for me, like in that. I want the pristine, the distilled essence. I remember reading Konjikiyasha and being angry that it didn't end, but then reading the English version going, this is not Konjikiyasha. Like, what is this? Like, old Omori story.
Okay. I was going to say,
Almo-
I'm not familiar.
Omori is author during the like Meiji Jidai period towards, I want to say he wrote it in like the late 1800s.
Okay.
Early 1900s, but he died before he could finish it. And it's one of my favorite stories. I don't know why. Like it's in that I novel era of Japanese literature
sure.
and stuff. And to me, it's fascinating in the aspect that it's like tell 3 lies and 1 truth. It's like, which one of these is the true one? And it may not even be true about you, but somebody you know, kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, and like just seeing the English translation of it, going, no, this isn't the same at all. No. It's hard just because it's just what's lost in that translation is just the flowery language.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to you, what are you okay with losing in translation when you're going through an interview or through song lyrics?
And it so much to me depends on what it is that I'm translating. Like,
Okay.
translating an interview and a song are extremely different experiences. Like it's hard to think of of translation experiences that are more different than that.
Right.
For interviews, it's a little bit easier of a question to answer because if you kind of get the Japanese well enough and you maybe even know a little bit about the person, though you don't always have the luxury of that, obviously. depending on who's being interviewed and how, much of a public face they have.
Mm.
You can try your best to give them a voice, obviously a specific voice that you feel kind of matches their personality that them to have when they're speaking in their native language. Somebody will be a bit jokier, somebody will be a bit more straight-laced, and other translators may, crucify me for this, but I feel like in an interview, there's only so many options you have.
Okay.
It's not a work of fiction. It's a person telling a thing to another person, right? It's an account.
Yeah.
So like, you can't, you can definitely do some things with it. You can definitely give people voices, but ultimately you can't. You can only really do so much quote unquote localization with an interview, right? Because an interview is for a very specific, to fill a very specific purpose. Now a song, you have so many options available to you, right? Like you were talking about with the story you mentioned just now. Like that person could have decided to try to match the flowery language. That is a decision they could have made, but they clearly didn't, given your reaction. And they sort of localized it, right? Which sometimes can turn out well and sometimes not so well. Like in anything that has that it makes sense to, I am in general a big fan of localization over translation.
Okay.
I tend not to be a fan of the literal translation. In again, it's tough to make that black and white statement, right? Because a literal translation is different things to different people to a degree,
right?
And B, like you can over localize something 100%. I'm not saying like as long as it's localized, it's good by me. That's absolutely not true. But I think it's, regardless of what some people might think, I don't even know that it's possible especially in works of fiction, for a translator's voice to not be a part of it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I
like
agree with that.
There are people who are like, your job is to convey the artist's intentions and that's it. And to an extent, that's true, right? Like that should always be a primary focus.
Right.
But you can't, as a translator, you're also to a degree a writer. Like depending on what you're doing, you may or may not have an editor that goes over your work and transforms it further. But as a person who's never had an editor other than myself for my translations, I'm not particularly experienced in that. But you end up with your voice in there, whether you like it or not. And it's impossible to ask for the pure expression of an artist's or an author's original work in English without having any of your own in there. It doesn't exist.
I would say the closest that we get is I can't think of the author's name. Norwegian Wood, that guy.
I don't think I'm too familiar with that.
I'll bring up his name. Let's see. What is his name? Haruki Murakami.
Oh, sure, okay.
But that's because he was a translator.
Yes, and that's obviously a rare case.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the probably closest example, because you take that and then look at something by Natsume Soseki, Bochan, or something, and you're like,
sure.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
So, like, I think that's, like, Murakami's work is probably the closest that
I think most people would agree with that, too.
Right. Because
I mean...
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, go on. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's because he was a translator at one point, and B, he kind of writes in English mindset. So
sure, that's true.
It works out. But
yeah. And I mean, in terms of like what can be lost in translation, like what's okay, like I think part and parcel with localization is I think you have a couple choices. You either try and capture the mood, the original mood in English, to the extent that you can, or you go, and again, this is a slippery slope. You got to kind of be careful with this, but it can work and it can fail. But you go for a mood, even if it isn't, super, super true to the original one, and you go all in on it. And hope it works out, because as an example, a lot of, and maybe you'll disagree with me on this, maybe you won't, I don't even particularly have a very specific example to call to mind, but certain things that people hold up as holy grails because they've been inaccessible to them, for example, the text in, certainly not all, but some older JRPGs, the text is actually really dry and rote. And some people just won't accept that. Usually those people do not know Japanese, and so they're just making assumptions. But, like, why would you take something like that and keep it boring? Because that was the original tone. That is folly.
Right. As I say, a good example of this, and it's not from me personally, because nothing against the games, because I remember playing the Game Boy Advance release of one of them, and I've just never gone back to them. Breath of Fire. Arbol played those in Japanese, and he's like, in Japanese, they're just as awful in Japanese as what he was telling me.
Absolutely.
And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's just bad.
Yeah, I mean, and this applies to, English language material too. In any language material, just because someone is writing something does not make them what you may think of as a writer. Like, especially the game industry is full of people who are just tasked with writing, even though they didn't really know how to do it, or thought that they could write and really couldn't. That's just how it is.
Right.
Of course, there are just as many examples to the contrary. I'm certainly not saying, all RPG scripts in Japanese are boring. That's absolutely not true.
Well, another good example is the stuff from Chrono Trigger that completely is left out about how the planet is its own living thing, and that there's something to it, and you don't get that context. I don't even think in the newest translations that's there, that there's
somebody who's looked at those more recently than I have may be able to point to something. But yeah, I certainly don't recall that being any sort of a real focal point in any of the English translations I've seen, at least not that I can remember.
That are just Robo's dialogue. How it has those kind of flashes of humanism from going from katakana to hiragana, which you can do in English, but it's such a different approach.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, it's just, you got to use short sentences, very like clinical language, and then you got to be a bit more flowery with it, not just Data from Star Trek where it can't use contractions. But I mean, that works, but
So. But I think it's the mood for me. It's the mood. Like, if the mood is there, I think or I guess if a mood is there, again, that's sort of a case by case thing, even for me. But if you can set the mood, I can forgive a lot. Even if you don't, capture every single nuance of every single thing. That I think what do they call it in the Japanese game world dialogue, a worldview, sekai-kan. So as long as that is kind of preserved, I feel like that will at least make me fairly happy.
Okay, I would agree with that. The mood. Me, I kind of not necessarily like the more literal translation, but I'd like you to try to hit the dartboard, please.
Sure. At least get it on the board.
Get it on the board. If you're on the board, I can forgive a lot, because I can at least rearrange kind of similarly with Illusionary Knights and
Right.
Knights of Illusion. I can dance with the language a little bit more myself to be okay with it, even if it is a bit more stilted. And that's plus it gives me, as a kid, it would give me practice to change things and stuff. So.
And I have no particular experience taking something and just so radically transforming it in a localization that it's almost unrecognizable. That's been done. I've never been a part of anything like that. I guess my style is more something in between those two extremes. It's not completely reinventing the thing, but it's also not a literal translation.
No.
It's more a melding of the two of them to just something that kind of feels right to me.
This might be a good, and I wish I would have put this on the notes because I completely was forgetful on my part. Because you've done work for the Gaming Historian.
Yes.
Yeah. So when he broaches you about this and you tell him, hey, this is how, do you explain how you do that translation work, or is it just kind of, you just randomly synced up and you're like, yeah, I gotcha, or what?
So just the story real quick of how we met. I don't even know how many years ago this was now. It was quite a few at this point, but a friend pointed me to a tweet back when he was doing his Satoru Iwata video shortly after he passed away. And he was looking for someone to translate some interviews on Hobonichi, the Hobonichi site, because Iwata had a lot of involvement with, I'm blanking on his name, the guy who worked on the Mother games and the guy who runs Shigesato Itoi. And it was like kind of a conversation between them, a series of them that had been put on Hobonichi sites. They pointed me to it. I said, this seems fun. I'll give it a try. It was actually my first paid piece of translation work ever.
Nice.
Everything else I'd done for myself or, for a site that I ran up until that point. And it worked out well. And it was so long ago, it's hard for me to remember. I think I may have had a conversation with him at that point about, here's kind of how I'll do it, but I don't remember that being a big deal. I don't particularly remember us discussing it all that much, if we even did at all. And now that relationship is completely on like the trust autopilot because I've done so much work for him at this point that he just kind of knows what I'm going to give him. But yeah, in that kind of, he's definitely, I don't do a lot of freelance paid work. I unfortunately don't have a lot of time for it.
It takes a little bit of time.
But what I do is mostly, and this kind of opened me up to it, is largely in service of like the gaming history community. Yeah. Because that world is lacking in translators. It's not missing them completely, of course. Like we've got Shmupulations and like wonderful sites like that, who do a lot of this stuff. But for your average kind of researcher who maybe isn't on a gaming historian level, because that's a very popular channel,
right?
They don't have a lot of budget to work with.
Yeah.
And they probably don't know people who can help them.
Right.
Or even if the stuff they found even has what they are looking for in it. So it's, I to the extent that I can, I like to be that for people. Just so they have someone they can turn to, and not break the bank, so to speak. To kind of help them with their projects. I've just found it to be very satisfying work.
Nice. I don't know if I've ever publicly have said anything about this. I had written out a whole video that I wanted to do that I've completely flubbed on not doing, but I want to do one on Gunpei Yokoi. I do not think that man gets enough recognition.
That's a great topic. Yeah, you do hear him talked about sometimes, but I agree. Like he is not talked about often in the same breath as like Iwata or Miyamoto or any of the other Nintendo
and he's the linchpin
all-stars
of all of
for
that.
Sure.
And
he absolutely is.
And just not only was he supervising in some way on a lot of games that are really near and dear to my heart, like things like Super Metroid. How much was he really watching over it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he's at least credited on there, and just the man himself from what he did and everything. I'm like, even
I mean, he was kind of the core of Nintendo's like fundamental philosophy, even still today, right? Which is, how does that expression go?
Lateral thinking with literal technology.
Thank you. Thank you.
Or,
yes.
Lateral
thinking with withered technology.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's still more or less what their philosophy today. And that was his.
He was the big part of that. And just the trust that he developed to be like, hey, this Miyamoto guy, he's fine. Let's
give him a chance. He's a good kid.
Because they just wanted to be like, no, this is trash. It's like, hold on, time out. Let me be your in between, because you're just crapping on everything.
Yeah.
And it's to do that from being the dude on the assembly line who was screwing off to making just a random crane thing that hey, turn that
came up with the Ultra Hand as a gag. Something to pass time.
Right. The love test, the directional buttons that some people might not think that's interesting, but to me that's like
it's very interesting.
A directional that's
yeah. There is not to dissuade you from doing the same video on this. You absolutely should, but there is a podcast that is done somewhat regularly by the Video Game History Foundation called the Video Game History Hour.
Okay.
They do have a very good episode on Gunpei Yokoi it talks about a lot of these things.
Nice.
For anyone who may be interested,
definitely check him out. Wonder Swan creator.
That I think is what's not talked about enough.
Well, because he gets slandered for the whole issue of the Virtual Boy.
Absolutely.
And then it's like, well, he did that, and then he helped. Kind of, what was it? The Game Boy Pocket. He helped. Was like, hey, here's
I believe so.
Little thing.
Yeah.
Piece. Oh, I'm going to make this Wonder Swan, and not to get too conspiratorial, but I'm going to put my tinfoil hat. How he died?
Yeah, a bus? Was it a bus?
I don't think it was
a vehicle of some kind.
It was like he hit they hit a truck, and then he got out, and then a car hit him.
Yes.
On the freeway, and it's Nintendo. Did you not like him?
Cut to shot of Miyamoto behind the wheel of the car, grinning maniacally as he drives down the expressway.
Like, there is corporate espionage. Let us not forget that.
No, it's true. It's true.
What Clover? Look at Clover and Okami and Twilight Princess. Something was going on.
True. That's a pretty coincidental.
Right. Yeah, we don't just all of a sudden be like, let's make Wolfie Boy games. No, something was going on. But yeah. Oh, Gunpei. Yeah. Anywho, yeah, that time. But to really shift hard, just kind of grind the gears a little bit and shift back.
Whiplash.
Yep, right. How do you feel about borrowed words?
This is like a weirdly complex topic for me. I think they're in a language they're very good for early learners. They afford you a lot of opportunity to be able to communicate yourself without necessarily having a large vocabulary. But they can become a crutch, like real quick, if you're not kind of careful about it. And so I've gone through different, different emotions regarding them over time. But I mean, this is the case with almost any language, I'm sure. But in Japanese, you kind of have to accept them to some degree or another. The thing that always drove me nuts about them in Japanese is, I guess drove me nuts is not the right word, but Another point is, I guess, they work well for you if they are in your native language. As soon as you have a word in Japanese, which is a borrowed word from another language, which you may not know, I'm looking at you, consento.
Pon is another one.
Yeah, they may confound you. For those who don't know, consento was it Portuguese? Or something. I may be wrong about the language, but somewhere in the back of my mind says that it may be Portuguese for an electrical outlet. Also, if you are assuming that every borrowed word in Japanese is from English, which a good many of them are, so you could be forgiven for thinking that, you look at it and you think it means consent.
Right.
Which I may or may not have done in my lifetime.
Yeah. Pon's another good one because but thank you, high school Spanish. I was already on top of that.
Yes, you were equipped for that.
Right. Bam.
I don't remember having trouble with Pon, really. Maybe I just saw it in anime so much that I just kind of like leaked into my brain.
And it's a simple one. It's just but it is a borrowed word that is. You're like, okay, but then is it pan? Is that what we're going with?
Yeah,
right.
Because you have fry pan,
right,
which is a frying pan,
not fried bread.
Right, exactly.
Right. I actually really despise borrowed words.
Oh,
in the sense that you can see the more borrowed words that infiltrate like the Japanese language, the less proficient Japanese speakers are at speaking English without an accent.
Boy, that's true. I never thought about it from that angle.
Yeah, right. Because you can like listen to what's the one that super plastic love or whatever that's always on everybody's.
Yes,
you hear that, and you can see or hear how well she sings in English. And then fast forward it. And of course, you're going to have some that are going to have accents and stuff, and that's fine. It's not the accent that I have an issue with. It's that because it in the same way that it can be a crutch for a moment that you kind of get back into it. Sometimes at some point you need to get rid of the crutch.
Oh yeah,
because it'll just hamper you, and that's the same thing with like anybody who's like a Japanese speaker who will just kind of sound English but they're really like, no,
that's an interesting angle to approach it from. Actually, I really hadn't considered that, but I think that does make a lot of sense. Actually,
I'm trying to think. There was a few different old like interviews and stuff. You hear people and you're like, what? That's a Japanese person speaking English back in like the 1950s or something. Like, cool. Like, A, it's cool just to have that kind of history. B, like, they're really, really clear, precise. I mean, I think of it on the flip side of like people who English speakers, one in particular, haunts me to this dying day. And he had been studying for at least a semester. And for whatever reason, just the American accent was really strong. And I get it. Like I would try to and maybe you can point out it being wrong or not, but when it comes to the ra re ru re ro, the do, it's to me, I say it's an R, L, and D sound all kind of.
I agree. Yeah. That's always I've heard it somewhere. That's not an original idea of mine, but that's always what's stuck with me, and I 100% agree with that.
Well, because I remember somebody saying it was kind of like an R and an L. But there's a D.
There's a D in there too.
Yeah, your tongue kind of sits in a very odd spot between the three, and well, imagine this person didn't take this advice.
Oh no! I see exactly where this is going.
So, I am traumatized by learning honorifics and such, and this person going "watashi wa karu desu." And I nearly died.
No.
Like,
Oh
like
no.
why? You have been here uh,
Oh.
4 months, and sorry, Carl, that I've completely threw you under the bus, but but why?
It's like he was trying to do a bit or something.
You would think. No,
Like,
that wasn't.
oh,
No. I mean, he was a really nice guy, but just,
I'm sure.
right? It's just like,
Yeah,
just.
that's and honestly, like, I obviously I don't know the history with this and him, but this is a stereotype which I found to be largely correct,
Mhm.
unless you really, really, really insist. Japanese people who aren't your teacher are probably not going to correct you on things.
Right, right. They'll
They're
let you
just
be
going to
stupid
roll
on it.
with it.
They'll be
Yeah,
like,
they're going to
okay.
roll with it. And unless you really, really dog them about it and be like, no, really correct me. Like, I
Mm.
actually want you to do this. And most people who are, at that stage are not going to be asking for that.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, it could have been some of that, but like that a teacher didn't try and beat that out of them
Beat it out of
is
them.
baffling.
Well, then it makes me wonder, like, this is after months of being here. Obviously, I'm wondering if they didn't try and then just was like, okay. Because I remember there was one teacher at Saitama who she had us doing kanji and stuff, but they kind of threw all the, if you're a Thai student, you're in the Thai class. You're an American
I
student.
see.
Like, they did
Okay.
that, and they did a very bad injustice for me
Hmm.
because everybody else was at, like, they were trying, but I was a bit above, so I'm being, like, hamstrung by this sort of thing.
I
Not
see.
to say,
Yeah.
oh, I was super smart. No, there were plenty of times I was
Right.
getting things wrong, but like kanji and that sort of thing, those are my bread and butter. And
Gotcha.
like, eventually, I would be kind of the jerk that would like be like, okay, I'm just gonna put my head down and just be like, okay, I know these kanji, and she would bring up the sheet for it. Eventually, like, I got my own little special class, and but that's where I read things like I read Bochan in Japanese.
Okay.
I read Konjiki Yasha, and I would have discussions with them on, like, okay, you read these couple chapters here. Let's talk about it a little bit
That
and stuff.
sounds like a good class,
Right,
really.
right. So, like, I got really lucky in that my obstinance when it came to kanji, and just kind of not wanting to be in the like typical. Oh, this is the typical American class. I was like, okay, all right.
Which this is a huge generalization, but probably if they were grouping you by nationalities, like I bet the American class was on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of
Yeah,
skill level, shall we say?
yeah. There was a couple people who were like the one who went with me from the same university. He kind of in a similar route, a little bit older, but he started
Hmm.
going to school and he self-taught on a lot of things. So there would be things that he was really like, he would know that I'd be like, I have no idea. And he's like, it means this, and I'm like, oh, but it's just from self-study slash just
Right,
interest in other things and
right,
whatnot.
right, right.
So yeah, and so he was fine with that. He actually lives over there now, and um, uh,
Hopefully, he's not miserable
no,
anymore.
he's yeah, no, I know he's doing. He seems to be doing well. He's, I
Good.
think, got a second kid coming,
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, yeah. So good on him. But like oh, what am I thinking? But like he was fine and he was doing what he could. Some of the others were all right, but then you'd have the knuckleheads who were doing their
Oh
own
yeah.
thing. It's just like, come
Why are you here?
on. Yeah, other
Yeah.
than to be that guy. you
It's
know?
like, is that still in your system? Really? Like at
Right,
this
right.
point, really?
Uh, but yeah, the borrowed word thing, to kind of pivot back on that, I'm not too keen on it because, like you said, it turns into this crutch, and
Yeah.
words are weird because they don't mean the same thing to people all the
Nope.
time, and you know what you see as fast, somebody might think, you could be quicker. you know, that sort of
Sure.
thing, right? And it's just like it helps kind of move things along sometimes if, yeah, like I said, you're having a hard time expressing yourself or something. But then on the other hand, it's like, please stop, please stop.
Yeah, and it was useful for me early on again, but maybe your mileage may vary on how diligent you are about this, but like I don't think I was ever particularly egregious with them even at the beginning, but I beat a lot of it out of myself just by, listening to how Japanese people talk, you know, and trying my best to, model my own speech patterns after that. And honestly, if you have a good grasp of like everyday conversation, like I feel like you'll find yourself not really needing to resort, to those too much, other than of course the borrowed words that are the thing you want to say. There are plenty of examples of that. So you can't escape them. At least not in Japanese.
No, but there's a time and a place, and like,
Yes.
I can think of some. I can't remember the specific words used, but there was times where one of the principals that I worked for, he was the vice principal at a different school, but midway through he became the principal at the other middle school that I worked at. We had a really good repertoire, and always just he very jovial guy. Really, like, he could be serious, but he just really, yeah, he's just a really good guy. And when he wanted to be cheeky, he would say things in English to me, but it would be like translated Japanese words into English to try to like or he would look it up in a dictionary or something, and you're kind of like, what who's teaching you these words? Like, where is this coming from? Like, just to get a reaction out of me, because he saw how I was with the kids, and like, and just I'm just a very, I mean, like with the podcast as well to a degree, like I'm very goofy demeanor, which is, some people would be like, really, like,
he was into it though. He was trying to goof with you.
Right. It's just his way of trying to goof and stuff. So like, borrowed words in that sense won't rile me up, but it's,
sure,
I guess,
if you're using them to be funny, that's
right.
Obviously a different thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to, because I was like, no, super serious, no borrowed words. And it's like, no, they can be good. It's just time and a place.
Yeah. Good rule of thumb, I think.
Right.
Time and a place.
I was going to say, is there anything you want to kind of touch base on there? Or, like, I know I have the notes of, like, what's the most, like, fantastic translation, or, like, an example of a fantastic translation. But I don't know if there's something...
We can talk about those real quick. Fantastic translations, this may be my bias, because I really like this series.
Okay.
But I think that what has happened to the dialogue in the last several Monster Hunter games is fantastic. Like, it is like absolute A+ example of taking what is typically based on I've played quite a few of those Monster Hunter games in Japanese. Maybe this has changed a little bit more recently, but not as of the last time I played them. The dialogue is pretty dry in the Japanese ones, and it's been handled by different people over the years, but the last several games have been continuously like A+, like really funny, witty dialogue, amusing puns. I think they've really done really great things for that series. And like, honestly, to me, it's to the point where, like, even as a person who has my choice of what language I can play it in, and I can have a fairly equivalent experience either way, like, these days I just set it to English because it's so good. And there aren't many examples of that. It may make me sound elitist, but most of the time I will, unless I'm sampling something, I will take original Japanese over English in almost any case. But this is one of those exceptions for me.
I haven't played through it yet in Japanese, but I wanted to get a feel for the English translation for Triangle Strategy. And at least in English, there's a lot of good quips and phrases and stuff in there that I'm like, ooh, that's a really good, powerful one. Like, I don't know, you hadn't played it yet, and you were like, it's on the back burner for.
I haven't, but I've played games that have that sort of maybe style of dialogue. They're like set in that kind of scenario.
Right. So like, there's some there. Personally, for me, and it's kind of an unfair one maybe because of how much effort they put into it. The memory sequences for Lost Odyssey.
Oh, and this is an example of a good one. Still,
yeah,
right?
fantastic one.
Yeah, those were amazing.
Like not only that, like have you bought the book?
I have not read through all of it, but I do have the book. I do have the book with the original Japanese ones, and I think I agree with you to where I almost prefer the English localizations of those because there was just so much care put into it by someone who is obviously like an amazing writer.
Right. Yeah, just phenomenal, just on part. Part from just what Sakaguchi was like, hey, I want you to write about 1,000 years of sorrow.
Right.
Like to just prompt that as your thing as for your who you're having to write, like, and then for this guy, I think he's out of Stanford. Like
I believe
so. Professor
yes.
out of Stanford. I wish I could think of his name, but
I also can't think of his name, but he is definitely a professor.
But just phenomenal.
Oh, it's amazing. Like you feel all the weight that you're supposed to feel from stories like that, and it's so good.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
That's like that's like a pinnacle. Like, but like I said, you hired a writer and then also a professor who I think one of their things was also writing. I
think so.
Something like that. It's like, yeah, you made sure you had the talented people, like really, not only talented but also incentivized to put in the work for it.
How you do it,
right? So like that's a really just fantastic one. I'm trying to think of another good one.
Can we do a bad one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I originally, when I was thinking about this, because you put this in the notes here, I was racking my brain for something that I thought was really, really bad. And so I was just going to go like, I guess Final Fantasy VII, because you've got like this guy R6 and like all sorts of just like weirdo, like, stuff in there that clearly didn't have much time spent on it. But what I want to actually put forward instead of that is something that I actually just saw recently, like since making these notes. Oh. So this is hot off the presses.
Oh no.
The game is not hot off the presses. The game is very old, but me becoming aware of this is hot off the presses. So I don't know if you're familiar with the World Heroes games, series of fighting games on the Neo Geo.
No.
The concept is essentially like, what if characters from history like Rasputin and here's a ninja and here's whatever all come together and they're in like a fighting game, right? So
why isn't he like a warlock or something? What? A ninja?
We can get into that later, but that's not the point I'm trying to make here. So World Heroes 2 Jet, which was like an expansion, a Street Fighter 2 Turbo kind of style expansion on World Heroes 2, has a last boss called Zeus, who looks nothing like, the classical image of Zeus. He's a big, beefy guy in armor, but that's not the point. So the English localization with this is very, like, this is almost an example of one that's so bad that it comes out the other end.
I bet it does.
And becomes good again.
Okay.
Because I swear to God, the ending for any character that you pick, you have Zeus kind of hunched over, like either bleeding or sweating or something. And the English language dialogue is, why you crazy funster, to think you were this strong.
Oh, oh boy. Oh dear.
And the original Japanese is absolutely not that. It's just, onore kisama ni kore hodo no jitsuryoku ga aru to wa, very standard, like
Right.
what you'd be thinking, like, you to think that you were this strong, but like, where did Crazy Funster come from? Like, what on earth?
Crazy fun stuff. Oh my goodness.
It's pretty amazing. I was watching a stream, someone playing it on Twitch the other day, and I saw it, and my jaw just absolutely hit the floor.
Boy.
And I promptly went and looked up the original Japanese to make sure it wasn't something crazy. And as you heard, it was not. Somebody was really going for something, and I guess they hit it.
That's gracious. Oh man. Oh boy, I'm dumbfounded by that.
A hard one to follow up. I know, but...
yeah. Like, oh man.
Any standouts for you particularly?
Final Fantasy 7 does come up because of just some of the like really bad wonkiness of it, but I'm also not a 7 fan, so
I'm not a huge one.
It's a bit of a bias to kind of dig the dagger in and be
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I can understand.
The ones like some of the things that get to me are some of the programming issues I have with like the original Final Fantasy, but that's not really a translation thing.
Yeah, that's not a fault of a translator.
Right.
I don't
or
think.
It may have been.
I mean, maybe,
yeah.
but I guess we have no way of proving that.
Right.
Because weren't the bugs you're thinking of also in the original Japanese version, or am I making that up?
No, I think they are in the original issue. They're in the original as well as an issue.
I thought so. Ages ago now that I played through the Japanese version, but I seem to remember those bugs being very present.
And just like, oof. Chrono Triggers, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just because of all the stuff that got left out. And before I knew what was going on with it, I would have considered it a bad, and then after I figured out the context of it, I was like, okay, not so bad. It's a lot better than bad. That's where you're like, oh yeah. Same thing goes with Breath of Fire. Oh no, that's just a bad story. Like that's just like, hey, that's just not so good.
Yeah, you can only polish the turd so much, I guess, in some cases, as it were.
I can't really speak for like Trails, because I've literally, outside of playing the first one on Nightmare because I'm an idiot for 30 minutes, but maybe a little bit longer than that, but I've not really played them in English. I played them in Japanese, so I can't really speak to how they were translated so much.
Same.
They seem to have hit their mark on that. It's also hard when a lot of the games that are like really hard to goof up the translation of Kirby games.
Right. Yeah, the mountains of story that there are in Kirby games.
the like cosmic dread of O2 and things. They just tell themselves. They don't really need
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there are a lot of series like that I haven't. I've checked out the localizations for like brief periods. Watched YouTube videos and things like that. That was kind of my Persona 5 experience too, to be honest. Right. I played that basically as soon as it was released in Japan.
Yeah.
And I believe I finished. I had a little bit of a delay there, but I believe I finished it not that long before it came out here, and so I was very curious, and I do think the problems with that are a little bit overblown. I think people made a little bit of a mountain out of a molehill there. Okay. But there were for sure some mistakes made there, and I don't particularly love how they represented some of the characters.
Really? Because I played it in English. So, because I'm not a big Persona fan,
Sure.
like I've played 3, I don't mind it.
I thought it was fine. I mean, part of a problem for us is maybe that we grew up in a time when, like, again, a good translation of a game was a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know how much of that is just forgiveness on our part, but
Well, I was gonna say I'll say one translation of a game that a good that is Xenogears. I think they did
yeah, I
pretty.
remember that being. I've actually not played that in Japanese, believe it or
It's
not.
yeah. Give yourself a fun challenge. Go.
I don't know if I like the sound of that or not.
Oh, it's just because of all the heady subject
Yeah.
matter and
Very,
everything.
very heady subject
Like,
matter. But
I
God,
think, yeah, I think they did a really good job with that.
if you've played a Metal Gear game in Japanese, it's
Yes, I
hard to
have.
imagine getting more of a challenge than that because like I barely really understood what nuclear proliferation even meant in English, much less trying to unpack all that baggage in Japanese. Like,
Peace Walker, baby. Oh, I love that game in Japanese.
Yep.
Oh, but with Persona, like, yeah, I played through 3. I don't like 4. I'll be one of those people. I'm not.
I can see it.
Yeah.
It is my least favorite of those 3, but I don't dislike it.
Part of it's because the mystery. I solved the mystery like really early on.
It's pretty easy to solve the mystery.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, if people are really invested in it, they might just
Yeah.
whiff on it. But like, I caught it really early on, and I was just like, okay.
It wasn't, and I mean, I say this about a game where people were going inside of TVs, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. But it wasn't weird enough for me.
Okay.
I'm not saying there weren't weird elements to it, obviously, but like 3 was super weird.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was
And
edgy. Shoot yourself in the head.
5, you could argue, what are you saying, 4, I don't know. 5 just won me over with the vibe.
It's got personality.
The person, even if it wasn't as weird as 3, like it just oozed personality, and I couldn't help but love it, basically.
It's killer soundtrack. Right?
Oh yeah.
But is it really that different from the English one, where there are some pretty substantial issues?
I mean, gosh, it's been so long since I read up on this, but there were some things where I think because of the way game localization works and kind of people who are translating it get it, given to them in out of context spreadsheets and, all these challenges that game localizers still honestly to a degree have to face today, from my understanding, is I think people got the wrong context on things, is what I remember.
Okay.
Like I remember I wish I could remember the details, and I probably should have looked it up for this, but there was something with Ryuji in particular that was just kind of wrong, but I remember looking at it and thinking, if I kind of do a mental exercise, like I can see where maybe through a series of like getting this information delivered to me in a weird out of context way that I would have come up with this.
Okay.
And I know some people are like, no forgiveness, bad translation is bad translation. I don't care what the circumstances, but as, someone not who's done game localization, but has, done types of translation and has just been a person who has had stressful jobs, even if they weren't translation related. Like I have a little bit more sympathy and kind of understanding for that than some people might.
Yeah, because you had some people who were like, I've got a better translation of it. And it's like,
oh, yeah. And I'm like, I don't think that's true, actually. I think your translation is like what you are able to put together by reading your Genki textbooks. Not trashing Genki.
No, Genki.
Trashing people who think they know more than they do and that they can do a better job than more qualified people without knowing the whole story.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that I wish more people would take into consideration, like you said, is what's all going on behind the scenes. That they're like with me and not knowing about Ted's Wonderful Adventure.
So much.
you know, it's just like that's a really important aspect. And yeah, you might be able to in a vacuum or away from all the silliness put together something better, but how long did it take you to do that? How
exactly,
like what other things do you have going on in your life? What else?
And And it's fine to say I don't like this line. I don't think it's accurate.
Right.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do that.
Right.
But to drag people through the mud the way that was happened with that Persona 5 translation it's just not warranted.
Well, I think that's
Like,
the last instance that I can think of off the top of my head.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and it hasn't really happened since, which is,
Not that I've heard. I
and
mean, there's
that's
always those people who are complaining about censorship, 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 but that's a different thing.
yeah, that's a different thing at that point, because that's what 6 years ago since Persona 5.
Yes.
Did I tell you the idea I pitched at one point on for our Persona 6?
I don't think so.
I don't. It probably would be a little too edgy, but it would certainly go back to its roots and stuff. Dealing with a mental hospital. Like, so you have a schizophrenic who, that would explain why they're able to have so many different personas.
I'd be into that.
You know, like that sort of thing. I think you could touch some really tough subjects going through on that. But
Hold on a second. I have to contact my friend at Atlas real quick. I'll be right back.
right. But like I had a big post on game FAQs and on
Oh,
it.
really?
Nobody acknowledged.
I mean, that's game facts.
Right.
The land of weirdos and people ignoring you.
I think I had a Final Fantasy V review got turned down because I completely dragged it because I was so angry about how
dare you?
How dare I?
This classic.
How dare everybody else give this game a 10 out of 10? I've played that game. I know that story, both in Japanese and in English. And no amount of 10s are going to be there for any sort of tree fighting turtle
No.
and tree scene. Thank you. XDeath.
If you like that game, you like it for the job system, and that's it. That game's got nothing else.
I mean, it has some things here and there, some aspects of it, okay, but no, it is not a 10. I will die, and on my gravestone, it'll be Final Fantasy V, not a 10 out of 10. Now, well, the thing was, is I kind of took a shot at Uematsu, and I was like, Uematsu must have been in a coma, and they had him gargle water while he was in this coma, and those were the tunes they made for this soundtrack. Because outside of like 2 or 3 of them, I can't remember.
Outside of namely one of them, which is like arguably one of the best Final Fantasy songs like ever.
And I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big
No?
Battle of the Big Bridge.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. See, like for whatever reason, that one does not jive with me. But I love the third overworld theme. It's
I have to even look at what that is at this
don't
point.
remember.
Literally, I think the only songs I can remember from Final Fantasy V are the song that plays over the title screen and
Yeah.
Battle at the Big Bridge.
Okay. Ancient Library is a really good one. But
Okay.
I also know that from what the heck is his name? Gaiden?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes,
2525. He
Yep.
had that really cool ethereal remix of it and stuff. But
Yep.
yeah, out of that, there's not a lot. No, take your stupid evil spirit tree XDeath thing and go away.
Yeah.
I like Arbel and I played that together, and we literally. He's softened, I think, a bit on it, and I just have this galvanized heart about it, but where I'm just like, no. But we literally got to the point where we basically became samurai class and just threw money at the problem. We were like, I'm like, we're done with this. Throw coin.
The very definition of throwing money at the problem.
right. I was done with it. Like, yeah, I was not too keen on it, and I think he's gone back and he's softened a little bit on it. But I'm just so adamant, like no.
But to be fair, it would be hard for you to replace your heart's favorite child, Final Fantasy 1. So.
Yeah, and I mean that's because that's such a personal. I don't.
Sure.
Have I done a video on that one yet?
I don't think so.
Like, do you know the full extent of that one?
I don't. I know you're really into it, but I don't. I don't know that I've heard you necessarily talk about the reasons why. And
Uh,
shockingly, I don't think you've ever streamed it.
yeah, I know, right? It stems from, I remember, like, it was the game that ruined Santa Claus for me, because I woke up Christmas Eve and my dad was playing it because he actually really liked the game,
Ah,
and that was how I found out Santa Claus wasn't real. But sorry, kids.
spoilers.
But that
Put it in
was
the show notes.
right. But shortly, some time after that, I don't know exactly how much, but my parents got divorced, and I didn't see him for like 3 or 4 years.
I see.
And so this became the game that, like, I was like, I'm going to beat this game, because he never beat it, and we would always play it
Okay.
together, and we had we would always name the characters the same thing and kind of go
Oh,
through it. And so I spent, like, this is even after he came back into my life. um I it was like 6 years or so before I finally beat it, and it was such a, like, an emotional thing for, here's a 6, 7 year old. So it wasn't maybe 6 years, it was probably more like 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years trying to, like, plug at this and get through this, and not really having, like, the booklet or anything to really go on to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get through this.
wow.
No.
That's actually like a very sweet story. Like
Right.
that's a very, very good story.
I'm avenging, like, my dad not getting through this. So, and I'm going to get through it. And I remember the first time I got to chaos,
Wow.
I got stomped. My characters got wrecked. I was so distraught. I was like, "Oh my god, I got the chaos." I'm like, I remember, like, shaking. This was before, like, the school bus was coming. I was playing it, like, super early in the
Oh
morning
my
and everything. And
God.
I'm like shaking. I'd left the NES on, and I turned TV back on and stuff, and I'm like shaking. I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm at chaos. And he wrecked me. Just
And there was
completely
no
wrecked me.
save point in that
No,
dungeon,
no, there
right?
wasn't.
Yeah.
None. I was so
Boy.
sad. But you know what? That happened, and it was like 2 days later I went through it, and then I just crushed it. I was like, yes. But yeah, that's why it's such a near and dear.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Good reason.
And it's the original one. I don't like. I can play
Right.
the PS1 version because it's the most
Right.
analogous to it, but
Right.
all the other
But you
ones,
want the original.
right? All the other ones, I'm kind of like, oh, that's neat, but you lose the teeth, and then you get
Oh
into,
yeah. They filed those teeth right off of pretty much every other version of it that they made.
right, and it's just like, nah, I gotta play the original one. Like, I gotta, like, and I will play that every now and again, just I like the music. I love the music. Yeah, it is that kind of personal game to me. Similar
Nice.
to, like, the nine. Nine's very personal in that same way, where I
Really?
I got out of gaming for a while, and it was a game that my mom got me around 2003, 2000, yeah, 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And the disc, it was a used one, and the discs were scratched, so I couldn't get into Lindblom or whatever. Or,
Oh,
like,
yes, I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
I couldn't get into it outside of, like, one section, so I was severely underleveled, and I got wrecked by the sewer snake with Freya.
Oh, sure.
And then, yeah. And so I put the game down, angry, whatever, done. And then borrowed a different copy from a friend of mine, and disc was scratched, and I couldn't get past disc 3. The opening of disc 3 video would not play, and it drove me up the wall. I was like,
Final
ah,
Fantasy IX hated you.
evidently. And I love that game, and I was like, fine, all right, okay. So I started, like, trying to put, like, a Frankenstein copy of 4 different discs of Final Fantasy IX so I can actually play the game. And I finally played through it, and I'm like, this is an amazing game. I love it. Vivi, why do you make me so sad? Like, just all those things. But, like, it's a similar thing, like that. Just that kick in the teeth, less from the game itself, but just the
Yeah,
circumstances of it really make that personal. And plus, it kind of really, that rekindled a lot of love for playing games again with that one.
That makes sense, and that's a good soundtrack. Like
Right.
it's not my top, but it's up there. Like it's very high on the list, I think.
Plus Coca-Cola commercial.
Yeah, I we translated that for Mognet.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
Nice. Oh man, it all comes together.
it does. Isn't it beautiful?
Right. So, is there anything you want to add before we kind of cut this? And
No, it was a great conversation. I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
yeah, it's always good there. If you want, you can stick around for the quote thing. That's up to you.
Please.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna flip a coin. Actually, I already know what the end bumper is gonna be. But yeah, we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. That delightful coffeehouse-esque tune. There's Flowering Night, which is from that same album of Eternal Eclipse. However, instead of S.S.H, it is Aether bringing the talent, and by golly gee, it is very, very, I don't know, it's very comforting to me, which probably shouldn't be what comes up when playing a Toho game, but
I don't think you actually feel very comforted when you're playing Toho games. Probably feel more stress. But
right.
yeah, I do kind of wonder what context this was used in. Like if maybe I could see it being used as an ending theme or something like that, more than I can just be like, a screen full of bullets, and then it's like come chill in the bullet hell coffee house, everyone.
right. If that was the case, it'd be like just one bullet, just sort of.
Yeah, lazily kind of meandering down the screen.
It's like, we'll get there when we do.
Yeah, it's very interesting how the guitar work is different between the two composers, because here you just have two like super clean acoustic guitars and a little bit of percussion, and the focus is really just on like the melody line.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, not like I'm some sort of musical savant. I dabble in the bleeps and the bloops.
Oh, come on. You didn't give yourself enough credit.
Well, I mean, for being just a that's like a self-taught thing for me. Not only self-taught, but also half deaf. So it's kind of like,
all the more reason to be proud of it.
Right. But like that's I guess for me, like with game music, melody is what really hooks me.
Absolutely.
So I'm just like, oh yes, I love that, and I do this in my free time, in public, while working. I will just kind of hum random tunes that come to my head.
Sure.
I can't replicate them very well because I can't process. Oh, that's an F sound. Oh, yeah, that's a no.
Ear playing is a little bit of a different skill.
Yeah, don't have that one. So it's just more like, oh, this sounds really nice, and I have no way to replicate it, so it's all to myself.
You could figure it out by brute force, but it would take you a bit longer.
Right, and I'd forget it. And I'd be like, hum, 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 hum. Okay, go through, and then be like, okay, I got it. Hum, 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 hum. Hum, 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 hum. And yeah, and go that route. But I do have a keyboard that I'll make little notes. Like,
Sure.
one I've got is, what is it? Like C, G, D sharp, D, F, B. And that sequence of notes has this really kind of creepy sound to it.
Gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, creepy. Yeah. But other than that, like, I just kind of fiddle with stuff.
Hey, I mean, it's kind of like language, where like there's no one right way to be a musician. Like there's extremely, great players of any instrument that had no, formal training, but
Right.
just had this sense and were able to, write like really, really unique things as a result.
There is a comment on one of them. I think it's like Nowhere to Go But Through, one of those.
Which I actually remember, like by title, weirdly.
It's a pretty beastly title.
Yeah.
Like, it's a tough, like, gonna kick some butt.
Yeah.
I think there's a comment on that one, or one of them that I made around that same time, and the guy's like, I came for the Diaspita video of the etymological look at like that going and bleeding into the Rig Veda and how that kind of connects to Rudra and then Rudra no Hiho and stuff like that. And he's like, I came for that, but I stayed for the Commodore 64 tunes. I was like, thanks, mister. I like
you. You can promise nothing if not variety for going through your whole catalog of videos.
Right, and that's. I know that doesn't help the stupid algorithm thing and all that. And
who even knows what to do about that anymore?
Right. And it's fair that some people are like, hey, I need consistency, and you do not deliver consistency. So, well, I mean, just in the sense, I know some people are like, hey, I subscribed for, Gaijin gaming videos. You don't do those anymore? Okay, bye. Which is fine. Or, like, I've seen it with other comments from people who are like on different videos of different YouTubers and stuff. They're like, hey, I came for these, but you don't do these anymore. So you could just not say anything, but in the same
range, I
range,
mean, that's a valid thing to do. Like, you subscribe for a channel for this X, Y, and Z content, but also you don't have to say. You can just unsubscribe. Like,
right, and just be like, oh, yeah, good luck to you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, variety, like, that's just kind of, I have creative ADHD, I guess, where I'm just like, oh, This thing is neat. Oh, this thing is neat. Oh, this thing is neat. And sometimes it leads back to the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, quote time, and I'm throwing this out here now. I guarantee you, I will put down $1 because I'm not a gambling kind of person, but one whole dollar that I've probably used this quote before, but it's such a really good quote for me in just a writing sense is one that I really like, but also B, for just this translation bit. And it comes from a European philosopher that probably had too much time to be thinking on stuff. Instead of doing stuff. Good old Ludwig Wittgenstein. And the quote is, the limits of my language means the limits of my world. And this is like, this could be like approached in a lot of different ways.
Definitely.
Like, when you hear that, what would you
Well, I think the most uncharitable reading of it, and this isn't necessarily what comes to mind when I think of it, but someone thinking about it as like language is literally the only means of communication, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, it obviously is a primary one, but just thinking of like, I literally can't have any sort of human interactions with another person if they exceed the limits of what I can process linguistically. Again, that's a very a purposefully uncharitable read of it, which I do not think at all was the intention of what was meant by it. But this is how my broken brain works.
I would say I didn't. As long as I've known of this quote, I really did ever think of it in that way. But
and you shouldn't, and I don't. I think of it more as I almost think I need a little time to kind of form up my opinions into words. So why don't you kind of vibe with it for a minute here while I put my pieces together?
As I say, I did throw it at you and didn't really give you too much time to think on it. So that is fair. That is my fault because I didn't do my homework and give you a heads up on it.
Okay.
But for me, this is where you get into like German language, which I am not any sort of studious person on, but they have these weird amalgamation of words that will highlight things that we in English it takes a series of words to piece together. Like they have a word that literally means the thoughts in the back of your head, in the back of one's head.
German is famous for having words to describe like ultra specific ideas.
And then we kind of, but to be able to conceptualize and understand that, we don't have a good way of navigating that. We just kind of think, oh, your inner thoughts. But it doesn't, the thoughts in the back of one's head, kind of, not that it's dark, but it could certainly be darkly tinged thoughts that are, maybe they should be stuck in the back of your head, and you should leave them buried there and just kind of forget about it and kind of move forward. like, maybe they're those kind of things. Myself, I think of it in the sense of if you are not able to explain something, to be able to explain it, even if it is more rudimentary, more basic, more simplistic language, that doesn't change the fact if you can explain it, if you can boil it down into that, there's an avenue that you have now created for yourself to understanding something tangential to it. If I'm I know that sounds a little weird maybe, but
no, I think I get sort of what you're going for here.
It puts down bricks that you can use to bounce onto a new, like something maybe related, something kind of somehow related. But if you don't have a way to explain it, it becomes like a very nebulous, wishy-washy thing. For myself, I think a very good example of this, and I know I've mentioned this before, is love. And how love is bastardized into being a very lustful thing, in particularly in American English. And it has sort of washed away there's the romanticism aspect that's there, of course, but a lot more times it's seen as much more of just the lustful act of sex. It's like, oh, I love a person, but it's because of sex,
physical attraction,
right?
Yes.
And it makes it weird in public to say, oh yes, I had this happen because I said, oh yeah, I love my students. I remember, and the teacher looked at me like, what? Like in Japan,
right?
And they're just like, what? And it's like, yeah, and they're like, part of that's because the previous teacher did some really shady stuff, so they were probably like, but then in the same hand, they're like, well, you've been here for 3 years and you're not weird like that. So, and then I explained it and they're like, oh, and then, you go through, it's like, yeah, it's more of I love you. I care for you. I want you to do well. I
Yes.
may be hard on you about stuff. I may not be supportive in the, oh, boy, yes, just rah rah all the time. No, there's times
Right.
where you gotta put your foot down and be like, you can do better than this. What are you doing? Like this is this. You know, you can do better than this. And and that's just from a teacher to a student relationship, or student or not student, but like a friend or peer kind of
Right.
thing, trying to like better them. Yeah, you want to be supportive, but you don't want to just be like false. I don't want to say falsely, but like hollow in the support, where it's just like, yeah, you got it, you're good.
Yeah, or just yes manning them and being like,
Yeah,
you're doing great no matter what you do.
right. Or even, I don't want to say insidious, but more the soft approach of that of you'll do better next time.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why don't you address and figure out what it is that led to maybe
Right.
goofing up, and then going, hey, let's try to fix this. So I guess in my head that quote makes me think of things like that, or like just in like relationships with people, where it's like you call them out on something, and then they're just like, well, screw you, and it's like, well, I care for you. Like I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to be a
Right.
jerk. Like I care for you.
Right. Right. Right.
But if people dress that up as like in their head that this is like this sort of critique is a criticism, and criticism is a bad thing, well, you've just that's a limit that you've drawn. That's a border that you've drawn in your world. That a criticism means that you are an antagonist. And
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because I think I mean it's hard to say what this actually originally meant because I believe this is probably translated even back to the topic there. But that's the most interesting interpretation that I not that I've heard this quote before, but of what I've kind of been thinking of while we were doing this, I think that's probably the most interesting interpretation of it because it's the one that feels the most real, I guess. Because no matter how many ways I think about this, I keep coming back to a statement that I don't actually agree with, which is interpreting it as that like basically all I know is what I have words for, which does not resonate with me really at all.
I guess.
And your interpretation of it resonates with me much more than anything I've been able to come up with on my own.
There you go. There you go. I guess in like it could be that your interpretation is more akin to what.
I hope not, because I don't like that as much.
Well,
It's a little more depressing to me, I
but
think.
got to think this is like a 19th
That's true.
century.
It's like it's almost disregarding feelings completely, which is like okay.
Right. It's like, well, kind of not a robot, so like that's what makes being a person just all bubbly and
Unless potentially if you were an old German philosopher, then maybe it's not.
I mean, I can see it how you could boil it back down to what you're thinking though, because it's if you can't explain it, it really just becomes a concept to you,
Sure.
and so that is a limitation on your world, because then you are not able to make that bridge to another person.
That's true. I mean, I guess that's a more charitable version of that same idea. Like I don't know what's going on in my brain today, but I'm just imagining a person who is like, I can't explain it in a word very well. It doesn't exist,
Oh,
like, and it's like
yeah.
I think I'm creating a little bit too much of a straw man here, maybe.
Maybe, but in the same hand though, like I am in that concept. I am in that camp where if you are unable to like explain something, then it's hard to get outside of that like situation. You know what I mean? Like if you're
Oh,
in
absolutely.
right, so I guess in a linguistic sense, it's a little harder because there's so many ways you can kind of dance around it.
Yeah, and if you're looking at it under a linguistic lens, I think it suddenly becomes a lot less bad faith and more like scientific, which is fine. Um, but yeah, I think outside of that context, it just sounds very defeatist to me, which is why I wasn't particularly happy with my own reading of
Oh
it
no.
initially. Because I'm not a defeatist person particularly, but sometimes my mind, creates these straw men, I guess, where I'm like, I guess if I thought about it this way, it could mean this, and it's like, but I don't actually think about it that way, so I don't know where I'm particularly pulling this from.
I guess that just I guess I'm begrudgingly the optimist at heart that always tries to be a little bit more charitable and not realize it.
Yeah, we've all learned things about ourselves today.
Which is I don't know. I guess yeah, it's something I don't ever really think about. And maybe you could tell do I because I said before, like I have some dark topics where I'm kind of
Yeah,
like
I don't know that I ever particularly thought about you as an optimist, to be completely honest about
okay,
it. Like
right.
you're not like a raging pessimist necessarily. I'm not saying that, but like I haven't like flagged you from a mile away as being an optimist necessarily.
Okay.
I think maybe you're a little more of a realist,
Yeah.
if I have to pick, and I feel like probably I'm the same way. But yeah.
Well, that and I know maybe it certainly can come off as a streak of like naivete, but when I'm dealing with people, I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Sure,
But in the same
same.
hand, it's like I may give you this, but in the I know better. like
Sure.
like I may be playing the fool, but
Yeah.
I
But I'm doing it because I feel like that's the thing I have to do to like maintain our relationship, like no matter how brief it may be.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like there was somebody I was dealing with about a week ago or so. It wasn't like it was a malicious interaction or anything, but he was going on about something, and I was not curt, but going and then asking some questions and stuff, and he dropped the conversation at a just like boom, and he's like, "You come across like an air marshal."
What?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Exactly, because I asked him. I was like, "What does that even mean?" Because I was like, "I don't know. What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Yeah, just the way that you don't kind of dilly dally on the side of things. You really just
Oh,
you
I
just cut
see.
to
Like,
it
get to
and
the point. Yeah.
right. And you're just you when you have a question on something, you will just ask that question. And I've not that I've been accused of it in the sense of like bad. My mother, coworkers have said this about me. I have a habit of just kind of cutting to something
Sure.
and just like no, let's just cards on the table. I don't need to
Yeah.
play this song and dance. This is not Machiavellian hour. I'm good. I don't need like I'm not for it. I tell my lies by writing stories because those are all lies and they're just
Sure.
fun. Like I don't need like, the plot
You're
twist.
not hurting anyone with them. Yeah.
Right. Plot twist. All my stories are lies because that's
What?
just I know, right? They're not based on true stories.
I, I'm crushed. Everything I know is wrong.
Oh no, I've let the cat out of the bag. Oh, that was something.
Josephine was not modeled on someone you knew.
No. And the thief. My mother was worried that because she read it and she's like, "You're not the thief, are you?"
Ah,
I'm like, "No, like the thief's a psychopath." He is an apathetic psychopath. No.
I do actually think I'm a psychopath,
Oh
Mother.
no. Right. Like, maybe if you caught me about, teenage years when I wanted to be edgy, I might sit
When
more in that
everyone
camp.
was a psychopath for a
Right.
brief period of time.
You might catch me in that camp a little bit more, but like, no. That's why he gets a good thief's end. So, I mean, that's not exactly why, because that would just kind of be. It works.
Yeah, you
But
wanted to do it.
yeah, but yeah, which is weird because that whole story comes from a very uplifting song, like
Oh,
the main boss theme or the final boss theme from Naruto no Kiseki. The title's like "For My Precious Friend."
oh, and that's where the whole idea
The whole
for
that for Sudrava came from. Yeah,
really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It just sprang from that. Like the climax scene in a different context came from
And
that
then you
moment.
just kind of built backward from it.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know how, why, or who. But
Hey,
yeah, it worked. Got one done. Almost getting another one done. Woo!
yeah.
Getting there. And it's a lot less psychopathic. It's very different. Where that one was a tale of apathy and psychopathery.
Psychopathy, sure,
Yeah,
let's go
sure.
with that.
Yeah, that's a word. I can make up words. This one is much more of a tale of love
Oh, wow.
in the sense of things that I love, not necessarily.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, any last little things?
No,
feathers
I
in the
don't
cap?
think so. It was a great topic. I'm glad you had me on for it. I hope I didn't go on too long about too many things.
Oh, you're fine. I'm the
Though
one
I
that
guess I'm
rambled.
on the right show for that, aren't I? If I was going to do that. It's right there in the title.
Exactly.
And yeah, I hope maybe to be back at some point when it makes sense.
For sure,
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for accepting my invitation to come on because I know I know it's with one other person so far. Part of it's I think I explained it before in another video about Van. These are really just to unpack stuff half the time because
Sure.
I don't know.
And that makes sense. Not every show is a guest show, and not every get topic is a guest topic, right?
Right.
But yeah, sometimes you have that benefit that comes in from having somebody else's take on this thing, and I think this was a good one to have, somebody to bounce. Even if it hadn't been me, it would have been a good topic to have somebody to kind of bounce around ideas with too. If I was just listening to it.
Oh yeah, and yeah, just not even like I mean, less about like the freelance work and stuff you've done just from our back and forths on stuff and just how much I know you've done on different things. You know what, we didn't even talk about idioms, but that's all right because some other time.
Yeah,
It just
we gotta save something for next time.
all right. So, but yeah, thank you very much, B Clerk. I'll make sure to get all the appropriate information and put it down below.
Thank you.
Yeah, and any last bits on that? Do you want to repeat it, or?
Yeah, I'll repeat it real quick for anybody who skipped past my intro. If you would be so kind as to check out 1millionpower.com and the event that you are interested in things related to Japanese retro games or Japanese rock. I've slowed down on it recently due to other projects, but I'm doing kind of an album by album thing for my very favorite band, the Yellow Monkey. Translating all the songs, translating interviews, do kind of similar things for games, game developer interviews. Sometimes my elevator pitch for the game part of my site is I'm like Shmupulations but weird. And so if any of that sounds good to you, please check it out. And if you are the type of person to use Twitter, I am bclarkomp on Twitter. If anybody wants to give me a follow,
Do it.
please.
Yeah.
Please.
Please. So, yeah, and we're going to right off into the night sky, at least from the recording of this.
Yes.
But this song I actually wanted to use in a fan game that I was making. I wanted this song to be used as the credits, like the ending credits.
It'd be good for that.
It'd be such a good ending credits, and it's a story I've had since I was in high school. That my mom pretty much stole the manuscript from and read it, and she was like, "I want the rest of this," and I've not gone back to it. Not because I'm being malicious towards her, but it's not an appropriate point to go back to it. Because at the time I didn't have the ending, and it wasn't until about 12 years later, so early 2000 teens or so, that I was walking with a coworker at night, just going to a convenience store, and it just slapped me on the face what it was that I needed for the ending. And I'm like, oh my god, I've got it, but it's going to be like a 4-book series kind of thing.
And wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of, yeah. I can ramble a little bit to you a little bit after because it's a secret. So, but this song here is what is it? Kami wa megumi no ame o furase, which means the gods give us blessed rain, kind of.
Yep.
So it is done by Sync, which, if I remember correctly, is Lute and Lix, who those two are another couple pair that just love a lot of their doujinshi music and stuff. And this comes from the 10th Toho game, Mountain of Faith, Fujin Roku kind of thing there. But it is also from the Night of Round Disc 1, which was the very first doujinshi album I bought because of the song. And I only heard a 30-second clip of it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need the song. I just gotta buy it. So, but yeah, good stuff. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll see you later.
Bye.